Good morning, members, and welcome to the meeting of the Social Work Services Committee. This meeting has been live streamed and recorded and will be made available on the Council website for public viewing. Remote participants, please follow the good practice guidelines, which include muting microphones and switching off your video when you're not addressing the meeting, writing speak in the Teams chat function when you want to contribute. If you're in the hall, you can do this on your phone or iPad. Please don't repeat contributions already made by other members. No material should be posted in the chat function if it's intended as part of the discussion. The usual standing orders apply, including that any votes will be undertaken by roll call. If any member leaves the meeting, please either leave the Teams meeting for that period of time and write leave in the Teams chat function, and then join when you rejoin the meeting so we can keep track as to whether the meeting is quorate. All members should speak clearly, taking their time and speaking directly into the microphone when making contributions. When referring to reports, please provide reference to the relevant page and paragraph to allow everyone to follow. Please focus contributions on areas where clarification is required or to propose an alternative recommendation. Claire, item 1, could we have the redundant apologies and Chair's approval of members' remote participation, please?
Okay, thank you, Chair. I've been advised of 3 apologies this morning from Councillors Bell, Wilson and Wood. We've got 9 members present on Teams, being the Vice Chair, Councillors Dashper, Heavy, Ingalls, Johnston, Jordan, McFarlane, Walters and Young. 3 members currently not present, being Councillors Karen Carruthers, Councillor Jameson and Councillor Little. Remaining 6 members present in the hall. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Claire, for that. I confirm my agreement to the participation of members named as participating remotely. Item 2, are there any declarations of interest? No. Thank you very much, members. Item number 3, minutes of the previous meeting. Are members happy to approve the minutes? Thank you, Councillor Dorbert. We are happy to approve the minutes, Claire. Before we go on to item 4, which is the first main agenda item in this meeting today, I'd just like to state that there was a slight mismerge which can happen on the agenda. The new agendas have been submitted and are here for those of you if you haven't picked them up, and they are also correct online. If there's any confusion today with the page numbers, please just refer to myself, and Stephen and I will make sure that you're on the correct page numbers. But the new agendas that you've received do match the papers, so thank you, these things happen. Also to say that in agenda item number 5, the data report, it had, because it was so full of so many charts, etc., it was a little bit crossing over, so that has been reissued as well, so there should be no complications today. Thank you, members, for your understanding. Item 4, Social Work Services Revenue Budget Monitoring for the period ending 30th September 2024, Quarter 2. This report provides members with an overview of performance against budget for social work services for the period ending 30th September, including progress on the planned investment measures approved as part of the 24-25 agreed budget to address budgetary pressures. Janet Sutton is available. Is she available today? She is. Thank you. She's online to answer any questions. So, members, do you have any questions with regards to item number 4, please? Councillor Dorbert, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. It's a question, a plea and an overview, if I may, Chair. It's like Groundhog Day reading this report. This is not about staff. Staff are doing really good work. They're trying really hard, but we're piling money onto children's services and we're not seeing any improvements in them. Now, we're looking at this from an accountant's perspective. This is a financial report, so we put our accountants' heads on. But we can't treat our most vulnerable and traumatised citizens like commodities. And I get that why it's been reported on in this way. I totally understand it, that we now have 26 children out with the region in residential care. It's going up and up and up and up, and it's costing us more and more and more. And I think, we're not it's not good enough. It's not good enough for them. It's not good enough for our region. And whilst we in the Labour Group put forward a request in August 2023 to review care, and I really appreciate the fact that a full report's coming to Social Work Services in February, and I thank the diligence of officers to make that happen, we're not doing anything apart from piling money on just now. So that's 26 children, young people out with the region. I don't know where they are, you know, but they're not in Dumfries and Galloway. We do have residential care homes in Dumfries and Galloway that are run by the private sector. Most residential care homes for children are run by the private sector. And I'm wondering if this administration could look to, in the interim between this report happening, coming to Social Work Services Committee, and whatever is agreed happening, which will take some months or years to make it happen properly, can this administration please look to getting some of our children back into the region, into the private sector care homes that are run in this region that we can't seem to get our children into for whatever reason, because of finance. The private sector care home system is a scandal in this country, and it's run by the private sector for profit. And that's they take children according to those who can pay the most. And that is absolutely appalling when we're looking at our most vulnerable people. So is there anything we can do, anything this Tory-led administration can do to try and get some of our children back into Dumfries and Galloway in the interim? Because all we're doing is sending more and more children out. And we're actually exporting one of our most valuable commodities, and they might not come back. And we need people to stay here as well. So even looking at it from that perspective, and I would imagine that the prices are much of a muchness. I don't know. In terms of the private sector, and obviously richer local authorities can pay more, or you know, whatever for children's places, which is just appalling to even contemplate when even talking about this in this way. So can we do something about that, even getting half of them back into the region, if we can do that in the interim period? You know, same with fostering. We're saying we've got 4 places now out with the region again, and that must be horrendous for the children and young people who are actually having to, you know, be put. It's bad enough being put into foster care or residential, I would imagine. I don't know, I've not been there, but it must be horrendous to be parted from your family. But 6,000 times worse to go out with the region. It's like you've been abandoned by everybody. You probably feel you've been abandoned by everybody anyway. So we're not doing a very good job there. And the other issue is housing. We're piling money on at housing again. And as my colleague said, Councillor Stevenson said last week, 3 people a day are reporting as homeless in Dumfries and Galloway. 3 people a day. And Social Work Services have inherited this. I appreciate that. It's new for Social Work Services to have housing. But we're not doing a great job here either. You know, what is... We, again, in the Labour Group, asked the Tory administration to write to Scottish Government to say, can we get the money back they've taken off the affordable housing budget? We're still waiting for a response from that. But, Chair, what are your thoughts on that? And what's your administration and who are, you know, leading the council, where do you see things going here? Because I don't think we can continue in the same way. So whilst financially it's not great news, I think we need to look out with the financial side of it as well. Take away from the accountant's perspective. We know it's not great news, and we are going to agree the money needs to go in. It needs to keep going into children's services. We can't take money from children's services. But have you got any thoughts on where we should be going, apart from what Labour have already suggested, which is quite proactive in terms of this going on the next year or so? Because I think our officers need a lot of support and help here. They're doing the best they can. They're doing a fantastic job with what they've got, but it's not enough, and that's not downing what staff are doing at all. It's just the situation that they're in. We all find ourselves in. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Councillor Dorward, and you make some very valid points. And as you know, Charles Rocks and Stephen Morgan have been working very hard behind the scenes, because it's absolutely crucial that our young people are looked after and protected properly. And we've discussed a number of initiatives behind the scenes which you have alluded to already, and we're going to keep pushing as hard as we can because it's crucial. So I'll pass you over to Stephen to give you more of that detail. Thank you.
Councillor Dorward, thank you for your comments, analysis and question. And I'm going to start with the children and keeping them at the forefront of my thinking, because regardless of the financial position, which is more than challenging at the moment. The experiential position of those children is what matters to us, and and obviously what matters to you and other members as well in terms of previous comments at other committees. So in everything that we do think about doing the very best for our children, getting the best possible care for now and improving their outcomes, and we're determined to have as many of our children remain in region as possible. But as you've said, it does take time. So I'll go through some of your points in order. I'm going to start with, though, that we're not doing a good job. And I know you said at the start of your comments that's not about staff, but I need to reiterate that point to our staff who will be watching this. Our staff are doing a great job, but the system isn't necessarily allowing our staff to enable families and children to get the best outcomes. In relation to interim periods and getting children back to the private providers who are here locally, that's something that we do constantly try and do. We try and work in partnership. The problem we have across the whole of the system, whether that's locally, nationally, and in terms of the private providers as well, is when a child's placed, if the placement's going well, you don't change it for the sake of change's sake, because that's the wrong thing to do for the children. If opportunities do present themselves, we will absolutely take those. Charles and I are actually going to be meeting with one of the largest private providers in the new year to further such discussions around if placements are becoming available, can we have, first opportunity? And that will depend on lots of factors, but I can assure a committee that we do that on an ongoing basis, and there will be a concerted effort to assist us in the meantime. You mentioned the number of children who are placed in placements going up. That's placed in all placements, not just those who are out of region. And we did last year express to this committee and to full council that, although we are getting the mitigating measures, which I'll let Charles speak about in terms of progress, that there was a risk that we would be in a position where numbers would go up, because we identified last year over 20 families, well, in the high 20s, where there were children on the brink of coming into care, and that we wouldn't be able to arrest that movement immediately. And unfortunately for those children and families, we've seen some of them come into the system. On top of that, we've also seen families that we weren't aware of and children who we wouldn't have assessed as being anywhere near this level, where there's recommendations from Children's Panel, for example, whereby we weren't expecting some of those. So I think I've covered most of your points. I haven't covered housing yet, but I'll come on to that in just a second. And Charles can give further detail around the mitigating measures, because that might be helpful as well in relation to where we are and why there's some difficulties there. In relation to housing, obviously, we're a stock transfer authority, so we've got limited options in relation to what we do with housing in a flexible way, particularly for children and young people. But what we are doing is working very closely with the Redchester social landlords in terms of access to their properties, looking at what they're building into the future, and indeed what they can do for us as we move forward. But their own build plans are restricted by capital investment as well, so there are issues there. So hopefully that's answered some of the main points, but for detail around, if you'd like, as a committee, detail around the mitigated measures, I can see a nod. Charles, over to yourself for those areas, please. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Dorward, and I really appreciate the kind of moral compass lens that's applied in this through numbers around the outcomes for children. Just to add what Stephen had mentioned, it's the point of welcoming a child into care. Unfortunately, most of the circumstances that we find ourselves in is it was on an unplanned crisis basis, either through decisions through the children's hearings or decisions through a public protection, child protection lens. And at that point of matching and scoping, there are times where the resource is not necessarily within Dumfries and Galloway. Our priority would always be to support and promote the child's right to community life, and we would work tirelessly in that area. The report and the appendix does give additional context and information on the mitigate measures and the progress within that, some of which has been implemented, but still at that early stages of forming the supports and offer around for kinship, and additional support and practice support that the team will need to be able to provide the best quality support around that kinship area. The appendix also gives scope and information around the progressive intensive support team, which is a big area for us. That's going to be very ambitious around ages of care and to support the transitions for our young people who are placed out with back. And you'll see the progress within that, both from a recruitment perspective, and I'm really optimistic about the outcomes this team can achieve. But again, we need to caveat that with in terms of that forming element of the team, in terms of their practice model, the service specification, and we're doing a lot of work to try and support that in terms of additional coaching and mentoring that we're looking to identify in that area. We're also looking to try and think about differently in terms of additional support that we can try and scope for this team, particularly thinking around a mental health lens for our children and young people, and also through speech and language, which is a huge area of unmet need around that area. The additional bit of information, just to can probably highlight for committee, is that 50% of our children and young people who are out with placement are over the age of 16. So it does highlight that there is a real pressure point around that, which is about the sort of positive destinations, either through supported accommodation, our children and young people's right to continuing care, which some of our children and young people who are out with placement wish for us to enforce. And we've got a position around continuing care that we will continue the relationships for children where appropriate. But we're trying to also improve what the options are in Dumfries and Galloway for that supported accommodation, that sort of step-down approach before children and young people are moving on to independent living. And there are big gaps around skill sets that we have to meet as well. So there is a huge area of work in this, but again, in the short term, there will still be pressure points in this area, as Stephen highlights. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Charles. Councillor Durbin, do you want to come back in again? Thanks.
Yeah, just to reinforce, I do appreciate, Stephen, what you've said. This is not about staff. This is not a criticism of staff. I know that staff watch this, and we should never think that as elected members we are looking to criticise staff. It's not the case at all, never ever. And I totally know from talking to yourself and Charles and talking to other social work officers that they do a fantastic job. They're totally dedicated to what they do. It's just they're fighting against a rising tide of challenges, and I think that's what we're trying to put over here, is what else can we do, what more can we do, as a council, as an administration, to try and address this, because funding's tight, to put it mildly. We've spoken about that already. There are really a lot of challenges here, and it's trying to be, as well as you guys being proactive on in the front line and doing all these additional things that Charles has spoken about to try and make a difference, to try and prevent folk going into care, to try and prevent folk going into fostering. And you've got recruitment retention challenges that will come on to other papers. So it's not about staffing. Please, everybody who's watching this and sitting here, don't take this as a criticism of what you're doing. It's more an observation on the system that's getting completely out of hand and challenging to manage, and we don't have the tools, the finances or the capacity to do it at the moment. So that's not about you guys, it's about a general observation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Durbin, for reiterating that. The whole of the country is in a bit of a crisis with regards to social care and fostering, so it's not just the South West, but the mitigating measures that have been put in place, we're seeing some positives, and I think we're really looking forward to the February report, because Charles and Stephen and his team have worked really hard, and I think we'll be able to take that report forward, and it'll be the first bit of decent positivity we've seen, well, not for some time, but it will make some relevant changes that we'll all be very appreciative of, so hopefully we can see that coming forward. But thank you for making sure that the staff are feeling well appreciated, because we absolutely do. It's most important that we do remember that, so thanks for taking that on board. And the next question is from Councillor Scobie, please. Thank you.
Yeah, Chair, I'm going to delve into the homelessness and to what Stephen said in terms of working with RSLs. And we had a seminar just a week or so ago where we were told that there would be 400 houses made available for homelessness, and the 4.6 really doesn't capture the extent of the problem that's in Dumfries and Galloway, notwithstanding it's across the country. And what it says is that there's significant demand for temporary accommodation, which is required to still use bed and breakfast accommodation, which is not suitable for anyone in terms of cooking facilities or facilities that are available to them. But what makes it worse is that we've got people who present themselves as homeless in Stranraer that are offered accommodation 75 miles away in Dumfries, which is totally unacceptable in any terms. And as Linda says, it's not a criticism of the staff. The staff are working their butts off trying to accommodate, but we don't have enough accommodation, or even worse, we don't have suitable accommodation to provide for anyone who appears or presents as homeless in, I'm sure it's the same in Dumfries, but if you're 75 mile away from your network, your family network, that makes it even worse. And that is a continual issue. The other part that's not in here, and that's aids and adaptations. And we did meet with the Housing Minister, I believe, in August of this year. And we put that point over. It has been raised in the House of a gentleman that has now been caught in a situation where he can't get discharged from hospital because he needs an aid and adaptation, and that's not being provided. I can say there's more than that one person, and we have been meeting with the RSL before, when they didn't know what their settlement was going to be in terms of aids and adaptations. And we've got OT, occupational therapists, making recommendations that will never be met because there's not enough money, and if it's for an example, a wet room more than ground floor, then they will never be met because the RSL changed its policy in terms of that. So we have people living in their homes who are prisoners in their own homes because they can't get a chairlift. They can't get up the stair. And yet we are sitting here, recognising this and not recognising this vital point. And I think, as Linda says, I think we should be lobbying the Minister, not just writing to him. We should be lobbying the Minister, making a point, a beeline to him, a track to him, and saying that we need more money. We need that money that you've taken away from housing to provide. So in that respect, I would hope that we do include it in the lobby. If it can be raised in Holyrood, surely we should be lobbying the Minister responsible and seeing how we can get more money injected. Because this talks about corporate budget pressure and allowance. Will that ever meet the needs of homelessness and aids and adaptations, is my question. And if it doesn't, then we should be at the Minister.
Thank you very much, Councillor Scobie. And just to let you know that the team and myself have been working with the Health and Social Care Partnership and the IJB. There is an aid and adaptations link for customers, albeit it is not good enough because the Scottish Government have pulled that funding for the registered social landlords. So I know Stephen's going to come in, and Rebecca's been working very hard on this behind the scenes. And if you are requesting today that you would like us to write to the Scottish Government, am I correct in saying that you'd like us to write again to the Scottish Government? I think I am, but if you'd just like to clarify that before I go to Stephen. Thanks. Thank you, Councillor Scobie.
Not just to write, but actually lobby the Minister. He's been here, and we don't know what he has taken away. That was before the RSL had received its settlement on aids and adaptations. And it's not just a health and social care partnership. If we've got people who are living in their own homes who are literally prisoners because they can't move for the sake of ramps or chairlifts or whatever, then we've got a serious problem. We've got a serious problem in terms of supporting our OT workers who are going out there, doing a job, making a recommendation that they know will not be fulfilled. And this idea that, well, you can go for, put in for another more suitable house. There are no houses for let. And we've got to recognise the extent of the problem. That's not entirely captured in 4.6, is what I started by saying. And again, it's not a criticism of staff. In fact, it's seeing how we can support the OT services. It's not just about writing to the Minister, but actually lobbying and laying out what the real problems are in Dumfries and Galloway. Notwithstanding there's other problems in other parts of Scotland. If we don't do this, then we're going to have people continuing to live as prisoners.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Scobie. Just so as well, you know, the planning department have been working with Wheatley and the other housing providers. Jamie Little gave us that information. So the new housing providers are now building at last houses that will meet the needs of people that require it, especially with our ageing population. So now ramps, wider doors and the ability to put in ramps and stair lifts. But you're quite right, we need to lobby as hard as we can for more funding, and I'll just pass you over to Stephen as he has more information. Thank you.
Councillor Scobie, thanks for the comments and question. In relation to the homelessness and housing issue, this report is about the budget position, so it's about what's within my directorate's budget, so that's why the information in here relates specifically to that. I do agree with you, however, though, that we declared housing emergency locally. There's one nationally, and as elected members are aware, we are working with partners to bring a report to full council later in the year or early next year. I'll have to double check the timing of that. So you will have more information about what we're doing in relation to working with the RSLs and addressing the homeless crisis locally. Aids and adaptations, they're not in this report for the same reason. It doesn't sit within my budget. The aids and adaptation sits within the Health and Social Care Partnership and is reported via the IJB. Having said that, I do know that the IJB are looking at this because the budget was spent in October. And you're absolutely right, we've got staff going out doing assessments right now, and there's no budget for this year, and people are put on a waiting list. What I will say about that particular point, though, is our social workers, and in this instance our occupational therapy staff, legally have to do the assessment. They have to assess the need, and then we can either meet that need or we mark that as unmet. And what the unmet need does, it helps us with the intelligence about whether the budget's sufficient. Given that it's been spent in October, it clearly isn't. That's something that I will certainly have discussions with colleagues in the Health and Social Care Partnership about in relation to what that figure is and whether anything can be done. But I don't have authority to instruct them what to do, but I can certainly have those conversations.
Thank you very much. And we go to Councillor Slater. Councillor McFarlane, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Morning, everyone. Yes, many of the points I was going to raise have already been raised by Councillor Scobie and Councillor Dorward. However, if you look at page 22 in Appendix 2, one of the things that we were talking about was the kinship care team, and it was put forward that this was going to resolve a lot of our issues. Now, I can see from page 23 that we haven't managed to recruit everyone or get them all in post in time. So I'm wondering what the position is in relation to that, and is it likely to produce the results that we were hoping for? Excuse me a second. Also, in the third paragraph, we've got 7 children who are leaving residential placements, which is going to sort of reduce the numbers somewhat, but obviously accepting that there are going to be some more who will come on. But we can't really rely on attrition. We can't really rely on people just sort of coming to the end of it, because no doubt they will still be picked up by us under a different budget heading. In the following paragraph, we've got the fact that the residential placements will reduce, but the return only seems to be something like £360,000, which seems like not a lot compared to the sort of some of the sums that we're spending. So I'd be interested as to why that would be. On page 24, it also goes on about numbers of intensive support foster carers reducing, and I'd be interested to know if we've got a handle on that. And lastly, on page 29, we talk about the placements. And in red and in bold, it's no packages within the lower cost level and one package in excess of 500,000. I wonder if we can help us understand, why that range and what the costs are associated with some of that. I mean, ultimately, the current position is unsustainable, and we need to start doing some things differently. And perhaps if we can understand some of these issues, it might help us get somewhere. But I think we're going to have to start thinking about out the box and doing things a little bit differently. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McFarlane, for these questions. Can I pass you over to Charles, please?
Thanks, Councillor McFarlane. I'll appreciate that level of analysis from yourself. I'll try my best to go through each point, and if I have missed a point, please do come back to myself. First of all, is around the kinship care team. The kinship care team is now fully recruited. What you'll see within investment measures is a slight variance because the team was not fully complemented within the point of the investment being identified. So there's a a small saving within that. The team is in place. The report does highlight there is additional practice support that the team need to understand that sort of quality support that they would be providing in intensive situations. Part of the scoping that took place in 2023 identified a huge gap around kinship support, breakdown of kinship care arrangements, and part of that projection was highlighting that there was going to be continual vulnerability and fragility around some kinship arrangements that this team will be there to target and support. So some of that sort of outcomes in terms of that investment will not necessarily become clearer in the short term, but will hopefully be able to identify significant outcomes over the next number of years. Next point is around the 7 children. That's a projection for children in terms of moving from out with care and residential care back into the area as part of transitional planning. Some of the children will require supported accommodation. Some of the children, young people, will have live housing applications that they will have either within the area that they're currently living within, or a move back into Dumfries and Galloway. I'll need to caveat that as a projection in terms of the current planning, and there is also a kind of fine equilibrium to these plans in terms of vulnerabilities or new factors emerging that can put a slight delay in that, but that is the current projection towards the end of the financial year. In respect to the intensive fostering, it's just not had the impact that we were hoping for in terms of recruitment and additional investment we've had in this area. This is not localised for Dumfries and Galloway. It's a national issue, and I know that the Scottish Government are doing a huge amount of work in this area, trying to join this sort of fostering network together and think about the role of Scottish Government in that and the role of fostering, given some of the capacity pressures. However, we do need to think about our communication and our marketing approach, opportunities to kind of think about this from a wider council perspective, and we'll be revisiting that to look at how we can potentially relaunch some different marketing around that. In addition to your question around the spend and the scope of the spend, we have one young person currently within a secure care provision. With complexity around that secure care provision, we're having to pay additional costs in order to secure that placement, and that was after one of our secure estates served notice on that placement, and we had to then renegotiate a fee, which we're reviewing on a monthly basis and trying to renegotiate the costs within that to achieve best value. Thanks.
Thank you, Stephen, for that comprehensive answer. Sorry, Councillor McFarlane, what are you saying? Thank you.
Yeah, can I come back in, please?
Yes, thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Charles. Thanks for that. It's a little bit enlightening. When I mentioned the intensive support, really what I was looking to do is try and see if we can identify and understand why we have lost 5 intensive foster carers when we have such a difficulty in recruiting in the first place. If we can understand why they leave, perhaps we can understand how to recruit as well. That was what I was hoping for. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor McFarlane. Yeah, the different themes around that, the number of pressure points that carers have had around the impact that the role may have. There is a natural period around at times fatigue that takes place around that caring role. It's incredibly complex in terms of the needs of the children and young people. It's a huge commitment, and at times that we have carers who come to a point with other pressures that they may have in their life and make decisions. That's not to say there's a whole revisit around the level of support and training we are offering to carers to try and make sure that there is that level of stickability around the role. So there are a number of themes that do come back, that goes back into the learning for the team to try and look at how we then recruit, match, support and supervise our carers to make sure they get the best support possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Charles. It is a very sensitive and challenging area. Councillor Slater, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. For the time I've actually sat in this committee,
just press it again, Councillor Slater, and if you
My
can just
fault.
speak up
On
near
the
the
time-
microphone, thanks.
Okay. On the time I've actually sat in this committee, I must admit, all the discussions appear to come down basically to money at the end of the day to get things done. But is it not time, really, that it's time for a major rethink on how this works? And also there appears to be many, many third parties here. And can the third parties be in some way brought down in the council, maybe take more in-house as regarding premises for people, young children and that to stay? And would that bring down costs? It's maybe something not for today, but maybe something for the future. But what I'm really saying is what I've seen in all the times up here, it's money at the end of the day, it's restrictions for your staff as well. You only have a limited budget, so there's only so much you can do. So is there any way that in time that more of this could be brought back in-house? Because you seem to be being held sometimes over a barrel. Prices will be given to you, you either take it or you can leave it as such. And I think that you need to be more in control somehow or other into the future of how all this works. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Slater. Stephen.
Yeah, Councillor Slater, thanks for the questions again. So what I can say is you're absolutely right. The whole system does need to be looked at, and it has been looked at nationally. So we had the independent care review, which resulted in publication of the promise, which said that Scotland's childcare system for children, or the system for childcare rather, is badly broken, and it needs significant redefinition, rethink, and different services. So it's not just about the money, it's about the people, it's about the places. And you can have the money, but you might not get the people, and you might not get the places. So we have to have a rethink. So we absolutely are looking at bringing things in-house, and Councillor Dawood has championed this today and mentioned the report coming back in February. What I will say about the report in February, it will not be a silver bullet. We will not have all of the answers then, so please don't think we will. But what we are looking at is looking at the acute end of the system in terms of our own children's houses, what they might look like in the future. But in terms of these mitigating measures, which also take time because they involve people, we're looking at earlier intervention. So we're looking at supporting our kinship carers. We're looking at earlier intervention across, the partnership with the third sector. We really want to help re-energise local communities as well. So this work is going on in the background. It's not specifically referenced in this report because this is about the finances, but we are looking at the whole system and what we can do. What's difficult though is we still have to do what we're doing. We can't stop caring for children who are in the system, and we do have to care for them in the same way that we currently do until the change can happen. What's difficult is sometimes you have to, reinvest or have an additional investment, and that's just not been available from a national perspective in terms of children's social work. Hasn't had any significant and sustained investment for over a decade, and that's been really, really challenging for this council. But this council has given us investment, and we are trying to do different things with that. It's just taken longer than we anticipated, and I think Charles has given some good examples and reasons for that. But we are confident that given time we will make these changes. It just takes time.
Thank you very much, Stephen Morgan. Just to say as well, Councillor Slater, obviously I do take on board your points, as we all do, quite rightly so, and they're very valid, but social work's a multi-agency approach, and we'll hear about that in the last report today from Hamish McGee, Public Protection Committee. The amount of agencies that are involved in social work is quite complicated in the Mosaic system and everything else that's used. But no, I totally take your points. Did you want to come back in again?
Yes, I do realise it's very, very complex. It's probably the most complex committee in the whole of the council here to try and get things right. I know it will take time. I know the staff are obviously doing their very best to get things done. But at the end of the day, it's not, as you said, it's not just about money, it's about people as well. That's true. That's part maybe I didn't mention at the time, but I should have done. So I think really, yes, things need to be looked at, things need to change, but it won't happen tomorrow. It might take several years to change this, possibly. So, but there has to be a start somewhere. Every walk is the first step. You have to take the first step into it, and sometimes you've got to think out the box as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Councillor Young, please.
Thank you, Chair. A lot of excellent previous contributions to follow. A lot of what I was going to say has already been said. And I'm very aware that Dumfries and Galloway is not the only region that is spending considerable amounts of money in placements external to their own local authority region. But the figures are staggering. In the table at the bottom of page 21, we're spending £300,000 per child on placements out with Dumfries and Galloway. It's almost £6,000 per week per child on these placements. And previous contributions have talked about thinking out of the box and innovative solutions. And in doing a wee bit of research myself, I see that Aberdeenshire has decided to try and reduce their costs of looking after youngsters out with the region, and they're actually purchasing 2 4-bedroomed properties, new builds, not converted older building, new builds that will be near the centre of the city, so they have access to all the facilities. In Dumfries, we would obviously consider a property in the middle of the Dumfries with access to DG1, etc. We really have to look at an innovative solution. And I know you'd probably have to adapt these properties to make them fit in with care standards and so on. But I hope this is the type of thing that will be presented to us in February, because we really must find a solution. Every year since I've been elected a councillor, the costs of providing placements for our children out with our region has risen and risen and risen, and it's now projected to be almost £8.5 million per annum. As I said in our previous social work meeting, this is a new Dumfries High School every 4 years. We must find ways of reducing these costs, and I look forward to the report in February to see what innovative and new solutions we can provide to this astronomical cost. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Young. And yes, the figures are startling, and I think the complex challenges of recruiting out with the area are huge, not only for the financial side of it, but also for the children themselves. And we will see a report coming later today in the Commissioning Better Outcomes for Children and Families, and we can go into that in more depth. But in the meantime, Charles, can you just give us a wee bit of an update? Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Young, for that question, and I would completely agree with your view that we need to reduce costs, but I also feel that we need to reduce the number of our children that are being received into care, and we have a huge level of demand of complexity. Some of that need is quite alarming in terms of the scenarios and situations that children are in just now, and it does need a full, wide, multi-agency response, a full systems approach in terms of some of the needs and unmet needs that are there. In respect to your point around that sort of innovation, these are parts of the options that we are looking at in terms of the arrangements in place. We laid out the different options at the last committee that we were looking to progress, and we hope we'll provide some additional context, analysis and positioning that to allow members in February to enrich a kind of good discussion and debate about what that may look like in terms of reimagining residential care. That has to be looked at with through the lens of the promise and our sort of aspirations around that, what children and young people have been telling us about care experience, along with additional supports we've put in place. So yeah, that example that you've given has been part of our thinking as well, with a different level of arrangements of what that would look like in terms of our sort of commitments going forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Charles. We really do look forward to this report in February. And Councillor Jordan, finally, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to understand a bit better what it's like to be in a bed and breakfast. I know that we're using bed and breakfast for temporary accommodation. I know it's a national problem. I just wanted to see if we could give us a little bit more information on that. So I was wondering what the longest current stay is in bed and breakfast, what the average stay is for people. Also, are they allowed to be there during the day, or do they have to go out? And if so, what support do they have? What happens with meals, lunch, evening meals? If they have belongings, what happens to their belongings? Just wanted to try and understand what it's actually like to be in bed and breakfast and what support we're giving people that are in bed and breakfast. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jordan. There's certainly a lot of television coverage given to this, but Rebecca will give us more information as to what happens in D&G. Thanks, Rebecca.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor. I don't actually have the data in terms of length of stay to hand, but what I can give is an outline of the support, etc., that's provided within a B&B environment. Excuse me. So we use a few B&B providers, and we're working with some of them to look at developing further supports within it. So there is a provider that we're looking to utilise spare rooms that they have to put kitchens in, to put laundry facilities in, etc. There is access to free laundry facilities to people who are in B&B now, albeit we absolutely acknowledge some of that isn't on site. But we obviously try our best to mitigate some of the anxieties and some of the things that impact on people. Support-wise, we do have support officers that continue to provide support to people in B&B, and we obviously customise this to the person's own individual needs. The B&B providers themselves often go above and beyond what is expected of them, and we have some really good relationships, albeit we absolutely acknowledge that B&B is not an appropriate environment for anybody, and we are working hard to try and reduce the number of B&Bs that we utilise. But those that we do utilise, we are working hard to ensure that they have more facilities in them that would make that stay as pleasant as possible for people, acknowledging that is not the right environment for people. We did have a meeting with the regulator early last week, and where we discussed the use of B&B, etc. And the regulator was satisfied that in Dumfries and Galloway we are making inroads to reducing the use of B&Bs where we can, and obviously to ensuring that the support's available when we do utilise them. If there's anything further, please ask.
I think the last question was their belongings, Rebecca. Thanks. Sorry, I know Councillor Jordan had asked that. Thanks.
So people's belongings, they can put them into, often what happens is that they have family and friends, and their family and friends will store any belongings that they have. Where that's not an availability, we will support people to get storage for their belongings. We don't always pay for that, but if need arises, then we do look at that as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Did you want to come back in, Councillor Jordan? Your hand's still up.
Yes, please. I
Okay.
do. Thank you,
Thank
Chair. So just to understand, do people have to leave for B&B or some B&Bs during the day? And if they do, where do they go? I know you said it's sort of bespoke and it depends on the circumstances, so perhaps that's covered in that statement. But I just want to understand, because obviously it's really cold at the moment, and if they can't stay and there, and they've got nowhere to go, that's where I just wanted to understand that. Thank you.
Thank you. Of course, yes. There is no sort of precedence that people need to leave a B&B environment. They obviously, there's conditions in terms of they'll, as it suggests, bed and breakfast. You'll only get one meal within that, but there are other opportunities for people to gain meals if that's required. But yeah, we absolutely would support the fact that we wouldn't want to see families or individuals who are vulnerable in terms of their homelessness status out in the cold. So there are other opportunities for them to link in. So excuse me, there are different sort of providers that will provide support that will include the provision of somewhere to go and somewhere to sit, somewhere to talk, and places to get advice, etc. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. And lastly, Councillor Slater, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's a question on the providers like bed and breakfast. You said that if there's additional equipment to put in, you will do that. So if that's done, do the provider have to basically sign a contract that they will continue to supply people, that you can send people to them for bed and breakfast, or can they just suddenly say, we're not doing it anymore, but you've already supplied maybe equipment or other issues that's been done for them to do that work for the council? It's just the fact, really what I'm asking for here, can they just at any stage say, we're not doing it anymore, and all the work that you've done within that premises could be lost? Thank you.
I'll just let Stephen come in on this, and then if Rebecca, you've got anything to add, that's fine. Thanks.
Yeah, Councillor Slater, thanks for the question. It's quite detailed and quite operational, but in terms of the providers, if they choose to get equipment, they've got to get their own insurance, etc. So the liability would sit with them.
Okay, thank you very much. I think now we can go on to the recommendations, if that's okay, everyone. So, members, you're asked to 2.1 note that it is estimated social work services have a £958,000 overspend at the end of the financial year, as detailed in Appendix 1. And 2.2, can you note the progress on the planned investment and mitigation measures approved as part of the 24-25 agreed budget to address the budgetary pressures and increased demand for children's residential placements. These are fostering allowances as detailed in Appendix 2. Thank you. Oh, Councillor Scobie, you want to come in again?
Yeah, I'm going to recommend a 2.3, Chair, given the discussions that we had around homelessness, aids and adaptation. That's to agree to lobby the Scottish Minister to put over the serious and unacceptable extent of homelessness in Dumfries and Galloway, and further to seek additional resources for aids and adaptations to address the particular problem.
Yes, I'm happy with that. I think if the rest of the committee agreed, and if you wish to put that in the chat, Councillor Scobie, I think that would be helpful.
Thank you.
Or Claire will do that, and we'll just check it and we'll approve it. So thank you for that. So members, we now go on to item 5, the Social Work Services Data Report. This report is a second iteration of the data report and now able to show activity for Q1 and Q2 for the financial year 24-25. We welcome the addition of the data for our resettlement, serving and housing options and homelessness service since joining Social Work Services 1st of April 2024. We must recognise that this work is in progress, as we've already alluded to, and we look forward to welcoming further developed reports on a 6-monthly basis. Charles, Rebecca, Avril, do you have anything further you'd like to add?
Thank you, Chair. What, as Chair says, the work is very much in progress in this report, and we're keen to set out the breadth and complexity of the activity across all services that we develop, so we develop that data set further, hence the inclusion of our resettlement and housing and homeless options team. What we'd really like to highlight is for the specific areas, so for adult services within the report, work has been progressing developing our management information system within Mosaic. So the increase between quarters in the data shown is due to the starting date of those new adult processes and workflows. They're becoming more streamlined, which was introduced in June of this year. So that's allowing us to more readily identify data at specific points. What we did see in our adult services is a drop in our adult protection referrals in Q1 for 24-25 in comparison to the last quarter for 23-24. So the number of adults referred was stable, with the drop in referrals in Q1 following improved triage and processes that have been introduced recently. For non-adult support and protection referrals, a total of 2,797 referrals, and this is consistent year on year, with exception again from the mental health team, where we continue to show that increase year on year since 21-22. For the first 2 quarters within our children and family services, a total of 4,404 contacts. Again, referrals is consistent with previous year's data, and of those referrals, 302 were child protection and 1,090 were non-child protection referrals. So as Chair was mentioning, the addition of this report includes data of our resettlement team, setting out the data for our Home for Ukraine's and Super Sponsor scheme, our Afghan Assistance Scheme, the Syrian Vulnerable Persons Relocation Scheme, together with the Home Office Asylum Seeker Dispersal Programme. For Housing Options and Homelessness Team, data is available for the total number of applications received on this iteration of the report, with a breakdown by age and household type, together with those household types in temporary accommodation and for prison leavers. And as the report progresses over the following quarters, we'll include and add additional data into both the resettlement and our Housing Options and Homeless Team.
Thank you very much, Avril. Sorry, I would just like to refer everybody to 3.5, where it says and develops exactly what you've been saying with regards to the development of the information and management system. So we will see additional data sets going forward. So I'd like to thank you and put that on record for the work you put into this, as well as the management team, Stephen and yourself, Charles. Thank you. So do members have any questions with regards to this report? Councillor Dashper, please. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Good morning. No, I think this is a really, really great report. I love seeing loads of data like this, so this is great. But my question's about the referral process. So page 38, Adult Services Key Findings. So there were 8,133 contacts received in the reporting period, and 3,668 referrals were created as a result. Could you just speak more to about, when there's not a referral issued and no further action happens, what are the issues that people are actually coming to us with, and where are we then pointing them towards? Thanks.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Dashper. I'll pass you on to Stephen. Thanks.
Thanks for the question, Councillor Dashper. Many reasons, but one of them, there'll be some people who have been referred more than once, so the initial contact will be a duplication, so there's only one referral made. But others, it's citizens across Dumfries and Galloway who might have some support needs, but they don't actually meet the social work criteria, so we would refer on to colleagues in the third sector. There just might be a straightforward no further action, although straightforward for the system, not for the individual, so we make sure that advice is offered and the signposted into the right services, and some of that might also be for healthcare, so lots of different reasons. Hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you, Stephen, and we appreciate we can't go into the exact details of cases in a public meeting, but thanks very much for the question. And Councillor Jordan, please.
Apologies. Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask about the Ukrainian guests and the families and the people that are providing homes for them. I know that there's a reference to there being, I can't remember how many it was now because I just had the post officer to the door, so sorry. I think it was 40. Oh no, I'm sorry. There was a reference to how many people were initially registered to look after our Ukrainian guests. And I see the number has reduced, the host is now reduced. Do we still need more hosts, or are our Ukrainian guests moving on and we don't need that support so much? Thank you. Apologies.
That's okay, Councillor Jordan. And I know the situation's changed with Ukrainian guests, and Charles will be able to give you an update on that. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Jordan. Yes, so first of all, to pick up in terms of new demand, we don't anticipate there being a requirement for new demand. There's a change in the visa scheme, which closes in respect to the timeline for new Ukrainian citizens able to arrive into the UK. So we don't anticipate that number increasing. What we have probably seen is, and first of all, is to kind of recognise the amazing work that our super sponsors and hosts have done in Dumfries and Galloway to reach out through Care and Compassion to offer that option to Ukrainian citizens in the most terrible of circumstances. But probably we go back to that period of time of 3 years ago. I don't think anybody anticipated at that point that the war in Ukraine would have had this length of time, and with no kind of clear position around that war ending. So probably there is a part about the commitment that people have made, which has been absolutely amazing. There is a kind of natural decision that maybe families have had, or the families that have moved into Dumfries and Galloway have identified other options in other areas through connections through other friends and families that they've made in that period of time. So there is a natural change in that number. What we do anticipate is that 2025 will be a challenging year again because of the absolute trauma that some of our families are experiencing, and the support that has been offered has been absolutely fantastic, and we need to kind of welcome that. But there will still be pressures around that sort of capacity, and we'll have oversight through our sort of resettlement board and our arrangements through that will keep a close eye on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Charles, and I would like to endorse the work that's been done by people across our communities. We all know people who've taken in our wonderful Ukrainian guests, and I can talk about one case in particular. She'll be quite happy for me to say she's contributed a huge amount to our local community with her son, and she is now working in a pharmacy in Dumfries, contributing to much of what is required in our areas. So thanks for the hard work that the teams have put into that, Charles. I think we're all very grateful. And next to speak is Councillor Walters, please. Thanks.
Thanks very much. Good morning, Chair. Just a couple of questions about the housing applications, which is, as Councillor Dasper said, it's very interesting to see so many of the statistics. Page 71, the housing applications by age band and household type, and the table housing applications by ethnicity. Can you just clarify the numbers on that? And that's one question. And the second question is that these scrutiny questions, which are in the grey boxes on the right-hand side, the bottom right-hand side, are those things that are going to be drawn out in future reports? For instance, the bottom one, which is how does our data compare against Scottish Government targets? Is that something that's been sort of put in there for our benefit, or is that something that's going to be continued in future reports? That's the two questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Walters. Good questions. I'll pass you to Avril. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. The first question for the housing applications by ethnicity, there were no applications received for those groups during this reporting period, hence there's no figures to report on. We'll leave that table there as the figures and data changes throughout we'll showcase them as we go forward. The scrutiny questions, they're set there for us to scrutinise the information as we start identifying. As I said, it is a progress report, and we will start looking at the prevention work that's being done and targeting those focused areas, and that will be showcased at the future reports. Thank you.
Thank you, Avril. Are you happy with that, Councillor Walters?
Sorry, can I just go back to the ethnicity? So the housing applications by ethnicity then, so there were no applications by the ethnicities that were listed?
Not for this reporting period. This reporting period is for Q1 and Q2, so that's from April to September of 24-25.
Thank you very much, Avril. The other thing to consider, Councillor Walters, is people have the right not to tick that box should they sort of wish to do so or not to do so, as the case may be. So that may be the situation there. Rebecca, would you like to come back in? Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, and just to clarify, I think that is the case because there have been people within these groups that have made application. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. And Councillor Scobie, please.
Yeah, Chair.
Sorry, Councillor Scobie, it was actually Councillor Dorward before you. My mistake. Thanks, Councillor Dorward.
Thank you, Councillor Scobie, for being so generous. Appreciate it. I'll return the favour on the next agenda item. Question on, thank you very much for the report. It's really great to see everything statistically. It's quite easy to read, makes it much easier to read, and I get it's been a lot of hard work to get it to that. So some questions on this unmet need on page 45. It's kind of squashed in with Children's and Family Services, but on the newly, there's 1.7 unmet need. It's about care packages, which I take it mean care at home packages. It's about care packages, which I take it mean care at home packages, as opposed to, yeah, just to clarify that. So we have at the moment, unmet need collectively across D&G of 3,110.15 hours and 331 individuals, which is unbelievable. The biggest gap is in this deal, but for every, which is concerning, but for every individual and their families, this is really pressing and urgent and shouldn't just be seen in terms of numbers. How does this, maybe you can't answer this at the moment, but how does that affect delayed discharge from hospital? Because we're already seeing major challenges in Grampian where they've had to move healthcare to Dundee and Inverness, for goodness sake, because there's not been enough room in the hospital. Do you know how this is affecting that? You might not, because it's a bigger question. But the numbers themselves, I get it's a snapshot in time. Are they increasing, decreasing, staying much the same? Thank you.
Thank you. Rebecca, please.
Thank you, Chair. Absolutely. I think that there is an impact on delayed discharges. I think that it would be disingenuous to say that that wasn't the case. However, what happens is that there's a constant risk analysis of people that sit on the portal. So this is the place where people sit to receive a care package. And that risk analysis looks at need and urgency. So there's a constant assurement that the people most at need are the ones that receive it, and the ones that are not receiving the support that they require, there's always conversations around what else can be put in place as an interim. So I wouldn't want people to think that people sit there dormant whilst they wait for care. There is a constant review of those situations. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Councillor Durbert.
Again, this is not meant to be a criticism of what staff are doing at all. I think, I understand why you're making those remarks, but it's not about that. It's about, I think it's about, the lack of capacity, the lack of resourcing, the challenges in recruitment, retention. Yeah, I mean, I have, most of us will know older people who are in receipt of care packages, and if you do it, this is not a criticism, if you do it, it is meeting the essential needs of the individual. But if you're as old as I am, you remember things as they were in the past, say 40 years ago when I worked as a nurse in the health service, we weren't in the situation that we're in now. And this is not a blame thing, but we need to, we report on it and we talk about it, and it's not you guys are doing a fantastic job, and staff are doing a fantastic job, and private sector staff are doing a fantastic job. But we have this constant gap between, required provision and provision that we can give out. And we almost talk about it like it's just there now. We're not even going into a major issue about it. And I think we need to, this is what's so good about this, because it draws it out, it brings it out into the public domain so that people across Dumfries and Galloway can see the challenges faced by IGB, by social work services, by healthcare in terms of trying to provide, and again it's about our most vulnerable people, care packages for our most vulnerable individuals, many of whom don't have families. So thank you for this. It's really great to see it in a stark relief that it is. I hope that it decreases over the coming months, but again it's about how are we working collectively, not asking you that question to answer, but how are we working collectively to get these numbers down. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Durbert. Over to Stephen, please. Thanks.
I'll say a wee bit, and Rebecca might want to give some more detail, but that's one of the reasons why we wanted to present data to this committee, so you could scrutinise and ask the difficult questions. In this area, though, what I can say is myself and Nicole Hamlet, the Interim Chief Officer for the IJB, are working very closely to look at, along with, I'll be honest, Rebecca and co are doing most of the work in the background. Let's be brutally frank about this. But we are looking at what do we need to do differently. And the answer is quite a lot. So we're looking at how can we invest in our frontline staff to give them the best possible training, to do the best possible assessments. That assessments are already great, but we need to continuously improve, particularly when eligibility might or might not change. I'm not saying it will, but in terms of where the country is, that's a question that we have to pose. Also, we have to look at things whereby we can, and this will come up later, but where we can save staff time around some of the bureaucracy. So we are piloting artificial intelligence, for example, to assist with case notes and assessments. We're also looking at what does our reablement offer look like in Dumfries and Galloway, because a lot of people who are not getting services right now, if they're not getting a service, are they left to degenerate, or can we do anything in terms of those reablement centres? So there's lots of work that's ongoing across the partnership. A lot of this is early thoughts, and we're looking at visioning and looking at what we can do differently. So even though that's more of an issue for the IJB table as opposed to this committee, important that you understand what we're doing. Rebecca, I don't know if there's any more of the detail that you wanted to go into in response to that.
Thanks, Stephen. I think you've really articulated that well. I suppose the only thing that I would add to this is that public perception obviously is really important, and I do think that the more information that's out there in terms of the kind of the global crisis and the local crisis is helpful for people to understand the challenges faced within the sector. But as Stephen said, the right care, right place, and the potential for the hubs, there are a lot of opportunities in terms of efficiencies and making sure that people have local resources that are appropriate to them. So I think that, I think it is going to be, it's like everything, as Stephen mentioned earlier, that change takes time, and we have to sort of deliver the crisis management, if you will, alongside the change agenda and the prevention agenda. But this is our ambitions. Thank you.
Thanks very much. I think that answers the question. However, what I will say is we also have to accept the whole of the UK people are living for longer. There's extension medications that everyone is getting, and I know the teams have also been working really hard on self-directed support, Councillor Dorward, which is a really clever way of working, and as councillors we're all involved in that, despite the fact it does take a bit longer. So I'll let you come in one last time, but I think we need to move on a bit because we've still got another four questions. Thanks.
I appreciate that. And how dare we all live longer? I know, it's naughty of us. I think you made an important point there, and I think it's the challenge between crisis management, firefighting that you always are doing on a daily basis, you and your staff are doing on a daily basis, trying to prioritise, trying to deal with things, and then do change management at the same time. That needs probably additional resourcing, and it's not there. Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, good point. Thank you, Councillor Dorward. Councillor Scobie, please.
Yeah, Chair, just on the point being made in terms of care packages, and we had the opportunity to meet with Stephen as the group, and Stephen did go over a number of points, but it still leaves this care package. When I was on the IJB board, it was about 3,500, and the target at that time was to get it down to 2,000 of unmet care needs, 2,000 hours of unmet care needs per week. Instead of getting down to that 2,000 target, it rose to 4,000. So something we're doing, and again, this isn't a criticism of staff who are working hard. This is saying that we've got an unmet need out there of some, I think it's now down to 3,000 hours. But it's, when I met with the NHS team only a week or so ago, the finger was pointed back at me in terms of a councillor, and that the council should be doing a lot more by putting resources in to meet these needs. And we've got to see, because it's all right saying, well, this is a health and social care partnership issue, when in fact it may be a joint issue with social work, with the council and so forth. So we need to bottom that out. That's who actually is responsible for these care packages and meeting the needs of the individuals, and the very high figure, in my opinion, of even 3,000, if it is at that figure just now, of unmet care needs. That's 3,000 hours per week. So I think we need to get an understanding of that as to where does responsibility lie, and if someone can answer that, then good. And the other one is on 4.2.7, where vacancy rates were at 9%, and that was up to October, which is a month longer than the 6-month period. And I look at the figure of 958,000 of an overspend. Was that 9% running for the full 6 or 7 months? And what was the savings in that by us not being able to recruit that amount of social workers in our overall figure that we employ as social workers? where that 900, if we were running a full complement, full capacity, that figure would have risen, in my opinion, a lot more higher than 958k. So, you know, we could be running with a 9% vacancy because, you know, and I'm not saying it suits us, but it does contribute towards the savings, if I'm correct. And maybe somebody could clarify that. And the other one is just on absences, and it's reported 62, with a big number of those on stress-related illness and burnout. Do we experience this and the whole issue of, and I know that there's a further report later on in terms of caseload and so forth, and just how hard social workers are working to the point of burnout.
Thanks, Stephen, please.
If it's okay, Rebecca, I'll come in on some of those points. Councillor Scobie, quite a lot there, so hopefully I'll capture it all in my response, but if not, please do come back. In terms of whose responsibility, adult social work and social care is fully delegated to the IJB and is delivered by the Health and the Social Care Partnership, but the staff are employed by the council. So the law itself can be a little bit confusing sometimes, but the responsibility to assess somebody's needs sits with the social work profession through the 1968 Social Work Scotland Act. And we therefore have a duty as a council to ensure, through myself as Chief Social Work Officer, that professional standards are met, and indeed when it comes down to the procurement of services, it's the council's name, as it were, at the top of the contract, but it's all done via the partnership, which can be confusing at times. In terms of, I'll use your terminology and the finger being pointed back at you, I mean, the council does give a significant sum of funding to the IJB to deliver these services. And we as a council in Dumfries and Galloway, for every pound that comes into our budget for pay increases, uplifts of social care, all of that goes to the IJB. So it's a partnership, although the IJB are ultimately responsible for the budget. You know, we deliver that care and support. In relation to the vacancy rate, it's 9%, as in this report, 62 people, or 62 absences they're reported within that. You're right that sometimes the vacancy rate assists us in terms of the overspend, but we would never use that as a tool. We proactively and constantly try to recruit staff to social work and social care, because we, along with the council and the IJB as a key partner in terms of delivery, want people in post so that we can actually do the best assessments, provide the best support, because we know the earlier we get in to support people, the less chronic the conditions are, particularly for older people with multiple morbidities. So I think I've picked up the points, but please come back if I haven't.
It was just a figure to that 9% of what it would have cost had we been running at full capacity for that period of time. What is the figure against that 9%? I don't expect that to be answered, but if we could get that figure, because effectively that's been a savings, because that 958, I think you confirm that, would have increased if we'd have run at full capacity. So, yeah. You know, and it's going again into budget setting for next year, and the need for an increased resource to social work to meet that demand. And that's the same, Stephen, while you say it's the responsibility of the IJB, then we still are running with some 3,000 hours of unmet care needs. What are we doing to address that? Is it the IJB's responsibility, or is it social work's responsibility to address those unmet care needs?
So the specific point about the care needs, that sits within the IJB and the Health and Social Care Partnership. They've got to do the strategic planning and the delivery of that on our behalf, but that's where it sits. But we work closely in partnership with them, and I give professional advice. In terms of the numbers, you know, our demographics have changed in terms of we've got more older people, less younger people of working age to provide some of the care, and also the impact of COVID, when we had a lot of people who would have been on a journey to become more, you know, more frail with multiple morbidities. The isolation, the lack of exercise that they could do, the lack of cognitive activity, joining in groups, accelerated a number of people through that journey as well. So, you know, the increase in demand is there. I did miss your point around work-related stress. We will be reporting on that in our workforce update in the new year. So we'll have details around work-related stress, etc. within there. So that will be reported back to this committee. But I'll get the figure for the 9%. I don't have it at my fingertips, but we'll get that and we'll just email that around committee if that's acceptable.
That's acceptable. Thanks very much, Stephen. And we have Councillor Young, please.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Dorward received a full and comprehensive response to the question on care at home that I was going to ask, so we'll not go there. But I would like to say what an absolute pleasure it has been to analyse data, a whole bunch of data set out in such a meaningful and easy to understand fashion, where it's easy to spot trends and areas of concerns, etc. So thank you very much for that. And of course, these charts will become more and more meaningful as time goes on, and there's more data being shown on them. And I would wish that other council committee papers would take a look at how this data is presented and see if they could present their data in such a meaningful way in their papers. Thank you, Chair.
I think we really appreciate those comments, Councillor Young, because I know how hard the team have worked. So thank you very much for stating that today. I think we can now go to the recommendation. There's no more questions. Is that right, Claire? Correct. So members are asked to 2.1 note the contents of the Social Work Services Activity Data Report provided at Appendices 1 and 2, noting that this is the second iteration of the data set report, and 2.2 note the addition of data for resettlement and housing and homelessness service from April the 1st, 2024. So we now go on to item 6, Head of Service 6 months assessment, Services, Housing Options and Homelessness Service Plan 24-25. This report sets out the summary performance for the period 1st of April 24 to 30th September 24, which shows a number of areas of significant progress. Appendix 1 of the report provides the high-level survey with context of progress and achievements set out in the body of report for each project. Where the project is currently reported at 0%, this is not reflective of the current position, as the work undertaken does not yet fully meet the milestone data set. Charles Rebecca Averill, do you have anything further that you wish to add? Nothing further to add. Thank you very much. So we can now have members' questions if there are any. Sorry, Councillor Davis, please. Thanks.
Hi there, thanks Chair. I'm referring to page 95 in the report, paragraph number 4.52, in relation to the development and implementation of the digital strategy to support people at home with care call and telecare services. What I would like to ask is, obviously we're looking to see this roll out from landlines to digital phone lines from January 27, but a lot of our constituents, you know, are elderly and have got a lot of care needs and quite live in a lot of rural areas, and I was wondering what sort of backup measures were put in place in the event of a power cut for these vulnerable constituents, please.
Thank you very much. Good question. Stephen, please.
I was going to say thank you for the question, but I don't have a full answer, but we'll get some detail. Our care call team have actually worked what I would class as some small miracles across the region, and we've had a rollout in way in excess of 50% so far, and they are well aware of the technical issues. I'm not, but I will get answers to your questions in terms of backups from the team. Come January next year, they're expecting to be well on the way through the high 70-80% in terms of the analog to digital, and I can only commend the work that they do. But in relation to backups, I'll have to get the technical experts to come back on that one, I'm afraid.
That's great. Thanks for that, Stephen.
I can actually probably come back in on that because I sat on the COSLA meeting and I have some data somewhere. So if I can be reminded after this meeting, I'll get that over to you, Councillor Davis. Thanks.
Lovely. Thank you.
Councillor Dashper, please.
Thanks, Chair. Page 97, 4.5.14 at the top. Representation and participation in the National Steering Group for Power of Attorney as one of our service plan delivery measures. It doesn't actually say in the progress whether we are participating in the group, so can you just speak to that and confirm if that's happening? Thanks.
Stephen, please. Thanks.
I thank you, Councillor. I'm not sure which member of staff, but we do have representation. As a directorate, we've been doing a lot of work over the last number of weeks to look at which national groups we're members of, to make sure we've got the best efficiency and consistency. We're aware that we need to be present at all appropriate groups. Power of attorney is something which is really, really significant in terms of an early intervention measure, so we are represented. We just haven't got into the detail in the report, so apologies for that, but yes, we are represented on that group.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Councillor McFarlane, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Page 96, 4.5.11. We talk about mental health officer casual contracts. Just we'd be interested to understand what casual contracts means, just to make sure that it is the common understanding. And it talks about incapacity and delayed discharges, so I'm wondering how they're linked. Also talks about delayed discharges in page 97, 4.5.15. And again, it says we're participating in Health Improvement Scotland working groups. I'm wondering if we've got any learning that's coming from that might actually help us going forward. Moving on to page 104. We've got the last item on there, ASC 104, which says that we're apparently in line to achieve it, but it's got 0%. And we're on the 31st of March 2025 closure. Almost lastly, but pages 110 to I think about 119 in the risk register, we don't appear to have any target risk identified, and some of these matters are really quite critical, talking about failure to protect children and young people and vulnerable adults and such like. And I'm wondering if that's perhaps a typo that we haven't got it in. We don't have the original risk. We don't have a target risk for many, but we just have the current risk, and a significant number of those are actually in the red. So that is a real concern. And I think that's me for now. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor McFarlane. There's quite a few questions there, so I'm going to go to Charles and then he'll decide which member of the team will answer. Thanks. Sorry, to Stephen.
Councillor McFarlane, there's different levels of expertise and different heads around the table. So in relation to the mental health officer, I'm going to go across to Rebecca.
Thanks, Stephen, and thank you for the question. Yeah, in terms of the casual contracts, we are looking to introduce those, and it is to enable us to cover some gaps in terms of the kind of contracted hours that we currently have. This is obviously goodwill, but I think what I can say about the mental health officer team in general is that they really have stepped up to the mark in the last year in terms of finding solutions for current ongoing challenges round about recruitment, which we're all aware of, which is obviously a national situation. So they're looking at a more flexible approach to how they work, and casual contracts is included in that. Thank you.
Yeah, we could come back on that, Chair. It's probably best if we do it as we go.
Yes, go ahead, Councillor McFarlane. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons I was asking about the casual contracts was because I do understand some of the recruitment challenges that we have. From your response there, Rebecca, it sounds as though what we're doing is we're offering additional hours to some of our staff to sort of gap, bridge that sort of gap. Is that the case? Thanks.
Additional hours, yes, at times, but it's really more about being flexible in terms of when they cover those hours. So there's potentially some sort of later evening work or some weekend work. So people are just being flexible in that, and that's built in alongside working differently during office hours to ensure that people have some downtime to allow for this flexibility. Thank you.
Over to yourself, Stephen, for the second question. Thanks, Rebecca.
Yeah, in terms of the participation in the Health Improvement Scotland Working Group, Rebecca would have been able to answer that, but there's a follow-up just happened this week that Rebecca wasn't aware of. So we do have our mental health officer team leader as part of that group. But in relation to Health Improvement Scotland, colleagues in the Health and Social Care Partnership, myself, Rebecca and others, are really looking at how we can, gather more input from them in terms of their expertise, and we're looking at that across a range of services, Councillor McFarlane, so not just in relation to delayed discharges around the mental health elements, but other areas as well. So our partnership with Health Improvement Scotland and also the Improvement Service is one that continues to grow, so hopefully that can offer some assurance to committee. Now, I missed which point you wanted clarification on in terms of the next question, but I think I got the one after that, Councillor McFarlane. So if you can bear with me and come back in on which of the specifics you wanted to look at next.
Yeah, that's fine, thanks.
Do you want to come back in?
Sorry, yeah, no problem. It was page 104, and it was the last item on that page, Alpha Sierra Charlie 104, where it says that we're online to deliver, and yet the closure line, the closure date is 31st of March, and we've not started it yet, and yet it's still showing green. So I'm just wondering if that is the case or if there's an error there.
Yeah, thanks for that. So what I can say is we've got a working group that are looking at the policies. We've had 3 or 4 events locally at the Carers Centre with multi-agency partners. So we're actually progressing quite well. The error was my error, actually, and it's how I defined the action, and I didn't have any milestones. So it's an all or nothing one, unfortunately. So I'll take note next year and have specific milestones in terms of setting up the group, holding the events, etc. So I'm absolutely confident that will be delivered on time.
Thank you very much, Stephen. And the last question was page 10 to 119, the risk register. Councillor McFarlane was just asking about the target risks, and so I'll go to Charles for that. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor McFarlane. I'll just probably give an update. We've done a huge piece of work around the risk register. We've kind of looked at the risk matrix that needs to kind of sit consistently with the corporate risk matrix and use of that. I think you're absolutely right to pick that up. We actually picked it up this morning as a typo in terms of the targeted risk, and we'll kind of get an updated position for risk register for February committee. But this still is in a work in progress, and we're really learning around how we best utilise this within our sort of kind of business arrangements, but also looking to extend the use of the risk register in other areas as well. And you'll see there are similarities and themes, both from an adult's perspective and a children and families perspective. So we're going to do some additional work around that to kind of separate some of the unique areas of risk there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Charles. The list has got so big now, but I think we had Councillor Dashboard before Councillor Slater. So we've done you, Councillor Dashboard. Are you still wishing to come back in?
No, I've got a different question, Chair. I'll wait my turn.
Okay, thank you. So, Councillor Slater, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's on page 95, 4.5.2. It's strategic outcome of people have access to services. I recently came across that because I had to renew a contract for broadband, and you're basically almost forced to take 2 years on the contract, and it rises by £3 a year. So I found out a few days later my landline doesn't work. It's not working at all. It's been disconnected because of this new system that the suppliers are taking away landlines. So obviously my concern, I've raised this before, is actually people on care call. Now I was told that I could you could plug a cable back into your phone as such, into your router, but it's okay unless you've got the right cable. If you don't have the right cable, you can't obviously do that. So there is an issue here a lot of people are concerned about. The factors is the cost as well. It looks as if everybody will have to have broadband for these systems to work. But how do they work? Because if some of the people have been probably trying to phone me on the landline number and it's been disconnected, probably thought I left the country or something like that. But these are important issues and need to be resolved by the suppliers, and also the cost factor as well. Thank you.
Just to say, I have got a report here from COSLA with a bit more of an update, so I can send that to all of you after this meeting, Councillor Slater. It might appease you a bit, but I don't want to read it out here because it's quite complicated. Councillor Morgan, thank you. Stephen Morgan, please. Great new job for you there.
Can I just assure colleagues in the room, I say colleagues deliberately, that when I retire, I probably won't stand as an elected member. There is a caveat in the probably. Joking aside, it is a complex issue, but people who are currently on care call, we're advising all of them, if you're going to change contract, make sure that your provider's aware of that, because there are some workarounds, there are some specifics in terms of the contract you can and can't change through, but the COSLA update will be quite helpful, and the Chair will pass that on to all members after the committee. From the Director, not Councillor.
Yes, sorry. Thanks, Stephen. Get this right today. Next we have Councillor Young, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just thinking back, about 30 years ago, people being discharged from hospitals, the expectation was that their family, friends, neighbours, and perhaps a bit of input from a district nurse would manage the majority of discharged persons' needs when they come home from hospital. Sadly, nowadays, I think the expectation immediately is, oh, this person needs to go home from hospital. They need a bit of care. What care package can we put in without sort of resorting to family, friends, etc.? So there's just a change in momentum, understanding, or whatever you want to call it. But my question really is something you referred to earlier, Chair, self-directed care. I know from personal experience how excellent that meets an individual person's needs if it can be set up. But the problem is setting it up. Now, some time ago, there was an external agency in Dumfries, I think, that managed all the legal implications of employing somebody, tax, national insurance, holiday entitlement, other insurance, travel costs, etc. It's a huge bundle of responsibilities for to take on for a newly discharged person. And I'm pleased on page 95, 4.54, that a working group seems to be set up to try and minimise the work involved in self-directed care, because I personally believe self-directed care is the way forward. And if there's some way that we can minimise the admin to the person receiving care or to the family of the person receiving care, then that really is the way forward. And I still think that if the persons who's being discharged family have to travel some distance or give up work to look after their loved one, then they should be paid accordingly and receive funds to allow them to help look after their loved person and take the responsibility away from perhaps a care at home package. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Young. Stephen, please. Thanks.
Yeah, Councillor Young, thanks for the comments and questions. And if I can offer some assurance around the social work assessment, we always look at that from a strength-based perspective. So what can the person do for themselves? What family, what friends do they have? So we do look at that. But the demographic of where people live and distances between families has changed in the time frame that you spoke about. So we do see different pressures. In relation to the issues around employing staff and everything that goes with that, it is quite complex, and not everybody has the ability to do that. So we do engage with providers to take that burden on. And as the paper says, there is a working group looking at that to see, if we've got enough of that in place, and we continue to assess the need that's there. So I can assure you that is something that we're actively looking at. Your final point is slightly more complicated, though, because the Social Care Self-Directed Support Scotland Act precluded, on the whole, family members from being paid as carers, because it changes the relationship from a loved one or a family member to that of an employee, and the government didn't want to interfere in that relationship. However, it does provide a number of caveats in relation to specific needs, communication that is, out of the ordinary, but also, and this is a more increasing pattern that we're seeing locally as well as nationally, is where people have attempted and then failed to recruit appropriate Carers then, myself and delegated others can approve family members to receive funding for care. But we have to be really careful that we're not impinging on the relationship status, so it is complex. Hopefully that's picked up the questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stephen. And we have Councillor Walters next. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. I just a couple of questions. One of them, I think, which Charles might have just answered already. But on page 113, and on a few places in the report, there's a mention of a pilot scheme for Magic Notes, and it's referred to as an AI tool. And I just wondered whether that was, I just wondered generally how that was progressing, and if it was something that might be used to cut down on travelling time and things like that. The other question on 113 is the risk register, which I'm not sure if Charles has just answered, but obviously like the risk, the original risk, the current risk, and the target risk. The current risk is marked, but the original risk and the target risks aren't marked. Is that what Charles was referring to earlier when he was talking about a revision of the risk amendments? So those two questions, please.
Thank you very much, Councillor Walters. Yeah, we can give you an update as to the Magic Notes, and also I think the second question was addressed, but I'll double check that with Charles. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Walters. Yeah. So Magic Notes is a tool that we're currently trialling in our adult support and protection team. I call it a dictaphone in old language, whereby we use our modern technology to record a conversation either in a team setting, an individual setting, or indeed with a person who requires our care, support or protection. And this particular tool is being developed in the social work and social care sector by frontline staff, and it's quite bespoke. And I must admit that I'm quite excited by it, and hence us piloting it, the first authority in Scotland to pilot it actually. And what we're hoping the outcome will be is that we're seeing a significant reduction in admin time for our staff. So rather than having to write up case notes, fill in set pro formas, the artificial intelligence of this system will do that for us. The preparation work that the company who run Magic Notes have done with us around our adult support and protection forms has been quite specific and detailed. And there's actually we've got a milestone meeting next week, which I'm going to have to ask Rebecca to attend because I'm going to be away. And that'll give us some of the interim data. But from what our staff are saying currently when they use it, they use words like phenomenal and brilliant in terms of what it's doing for them. So I'm quite excited that that will give us the opportunity to reduce some of that admin time. It might give us the opportunity to use travel time a little bit differently as well. But we will definitely update you on the progress of that. And it might also come up later on the agenda in terms of setting the bar when we're looking at the specifics of the time that our staff use. So that's the Magic Notes update. It's going well, but we'll get specific data in the coming weeks. And yes, Charles did say that there are some typing errors and some work ongoing around the risk register, so we'll absolutely sort that out, and it'll be better reflected in the next report. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. So I think we'll just leave it at that. Is that okay, Councillor Walters? And moving on to Councillor Scobie, please.
Thanks, Chair, and I think we've well debated the homeless problems in Dumfries and Galloway with an outcome on that. I'm looking at page 96, 4.5.5, and recognising that we've just had the Care Inspectorate issuing 2 improvement notices on care homes in Dumfries and Galloway. And my first question would be is that rather than relying or waiting on the Care Inspectorate coming in to inspect the homes, unannounced as they do, that we set the standard in terms of what we would expect before we place anyone into these homes under right care, right place. My next issue would be on the figures, and I believe in the first year it was something like 33 beds are being purchased for right care, right place. Now you and I and others share that perhaps the cottage hospitals could have provided a service there. and indeed the communities would see it as well in meeting their expectations. But in respect of the number that I've just referred to, what are the numbers for west of the region, and have those been met, given it was a year to start in October?
Thanks very much, Councillor Scobie. I think we've seen the update to the 2 care homes and things are looking very positive, but I'll let Stephen come in on that and also your second question with regards to... Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Scobie. The registration and regulation of a care home sits with the Care Inspectorate, and they have to give that permission for an operator to operate as a care home, and that's the legal position. From our perspective, we have to be comfortable that the standards that any care home provide would meet the care needs of people when we're commissioning. So we had we've got historical arrangements in place, and when you have historical arrangements in place and people are living in care homes, you then have to react appropriately to what's happening in terms of the care inspection and their findings. So we do have a contractor position, but we don't just rely on the care inspector to come in and inspect. We've also got a collaborative care home support team who go out and do visits and do support plans and help some of the care homes in terms of their improvement journey as well. So the legal position is it's the Care Inspectorate who register and inspect, and it's the Social Services Council who register the staff and make sure that they meet the appropriate standards. From our perspective, it is about commissioning. So if we have a care home that is struggling and there's an improvement notice, we put an immediate moratorium on that so that we don't purchase any more beds until the improvements have been met. So it is, although reactive in terms of the inspectors come in, we're proactive in terms of our actions that follow on from that. So we do have to be careful that we're not duplicating work in terms of inspecting premises that the Care Inspectorate have the responsibility for, but we also make sure that through the social work assessments and the reviews that people's needs are being met. So there's an ongoing programme of support and review in amongst the episodic and the unannounced and the announced inspections that the Care Inspectorate provides. So the whole system does support that. And in relation to the data for numbers of beds in the West, I'll have to speak to colleagues in Commission to see where we are. I don't have those figures at hand, but I can get them to you via email after the committee, if that's okay.
Thank you very much, Stephen. I think it's actually important that members are kept up to date with how the commissioning of beds are going, so I would be happy to support your question. Thanks.
Particularly, the whole issue was to start in October, as I understand. So we're well into October, November, and near the end, the beginning of December anyway, and it's whether we're meeting those needs in terms of right care, right place, matched against the delayed discharges that was referred to earlier in the meeting. So it's whether we've met those numbers west of the region, and indeed the 33 throughout the whole region in this year, because months are passing and we don't know if we've got these beds, whether we've purchased. And I would have thought that would have been in the report.
Yeah, it's a good point, thank you. And I think the data can be sourced, so we'll let Stephen chase that up and report back, because it's an important point, Councillor Scobie, and I have to agree with you on that one. So are we okay with that? Can we move on to Councillor Dashper?
Thanks for letting me back in, Chair. Yeah, just a wee quick one to finish us off. Page 102, strategic outcome SO 19.1. As part of the council plan delivery, implement the housing options and homelessness strategy 2023 to 2028. Considering we're not going to finish it until 2025, can you just confirm that it's going to be from 2025 to 2030, because we can't finish a plan that starts from 2023? Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Dashper. That'll be Rebecca, thanks.
Thank you, Chair, and yes, thank you, Councillor. Yeah, I can confirm that will be the case. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Dashper. Thank you. And is that... Oh, Councillor Jorbert, thanks.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Dashper, for asking a bit of the question I was going to ask on implementation of housing options and homeless strategy. But the other bit of the question I was going to ask is this linked to the South of Scotland Action Plan published by the REP in July this year, of which you are a signatory? Thank you.
Rebecca, are you able to answer that? Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. It certainly will reflect those findings and those discussions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, members. I think that concludes this agenda item, so we can now go to the recommendations. Are members content that you have 2.1, reviewed the summary of performance for the Adult Services Housing Options and Homelessness Service Plan for the period 1st April 24 to 30th September 24, which includes council plan delivery, service plan delivery, change and improvement activities, success measures which are service specific council-wide, including health and safety and local government benchmarking framework, and the management of risks within the services risk register in Appendix 1. And 2.2, agree the proposed amendments to current adult services, housing options and homelessness service plan as set out in Appendix 3. Are members happy to agree? Thank you, everyone. Now, I'm just a bit concerned. Does anybody need a 5-minute respite break? Or are we fine to continue? Fine to continue. That's great. Agenda item number 7. Head of Service 6 months assessment, 1st April 24 to 30th September 24. Children, Families, Justice and Resettlement Service Plan 24-25. Again, this report sets out the summary of performance for the period April 24 to 30th September 24, which shows a number of areas of significant progress. Appendix 1 of the report provides the high-level summary with context of progress and achievements set out in the body of report for each project. Where a project is currently reported at 0%, this is not reflective of the current position as the work undertaken does not yet fully meet the milestone data set. Charles, do you have anything further you wish to add? Thank you.
Yeah, just to add that there's a lot of kind of real positives and fantastic progress in some areas of work here, and I just want to kind of appreciate a big thanks to my team who have done a huge amount of work in this area to progress these actions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Charles. Do we have any questions from anyone in this committee today? Councillor Dorbert.
Apologies, I don't have my mobile with me, so I can't use the phone to evidence. Yeah, thank you very much for this report, and as an example of proactive work that support services are doing in this area, in the area of children and young people's welfare. Turn attention to page 134 even.
Sorry, Councillor Dorbert, I didn't hear you.
134, sorry.
Thank you.
Too much stuff on my desk. And 4.5.7, yes, it is 4.5.7. Regeneration even of intensive support service for foster carers is an support service foster carers, not for foster carers. Again, is an example of a proactive approach that you're looking to initiate or blend into what we're doing. And it says looking to appoint 10. So can you ask where we are on this, given the challenges we already outlined? And I won't go back to that in agenda item 4. Thanks.
That's a good question. Thank you. Charles, please.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Dorward. This had been picked up and profiled as part of the kind of budget paper as well. Unfortunately, we've not done well on Downs recruitment, and despite the best efforts of the team to profile that and use different mediums to try and profile the advert, we're going to go back again, scratch heads and look for some solutions and ideas. There's an offer from the wider council, and particularly around how we kind of look at our market and comms approach to this as well, to try and get the message across and really sell this at the heart of our communities, because this is a fantastic opportunity, and with a fantastic team that will wrap around and support carers who are offering this to their families. So that'll be a 2025 wicked issue to try and support. Thanks.
Thanks, Charles, for the work you're doing. Councillor Dorward again. Thanks.
Thanks, Chair, for allowing me back in. Can I ask what the barriers are, Charles?
I wish I had a crystal ball on that, because then I could try and have a solution to a lot of the barriers within this. It's both a local and national issue around fostering as a whole. This is a package put together around the nature of complex need, whether or not there's a hesitancy or an uncertainty at this time where people are, where our communities are, I think there are huge strengths, there are communities, there are skill sets there that go untapped that we can look into. It's trying to find the hook. And if we can hook into a conversation and discussion, I'm convinced that we can attract our right carers to support this. One area we are going to be looking at, we have been doing some scoping around this, is that our legacy of carers who have been providing kinship care to our children. Our children, young people have grown up, they're young adults now, they've done a fantastic job. They may feel they've got something else to offer, and going back and revisiting that and asking the question around this area of support as well. So in terms of barriers, there's, this other side of the pandemic, people are maybe revisiting and rethinking about where some of their priorities are within their own family network, and maybe not able to offer as what they have done in the past, and we're just trying to reshape that a little bit. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Charles. Councillor Jordan, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just wanted to ask for an update regarding page 133, 4.5.2, regarding rural communities. There was some funding set aside for some 3-bedroom properties, 20, to be refurbed. And it says in the report that 10 are housing Ukrainian families. I believe that's what it says. And I just wondered if you could give us an update on that, please. Are the other 10 properties being used? Or are they, and what are they being used for? Would you mind updating? Thank you.
Charles, are you able to answer that? Thanks.
Yeah, thanks. I don't have that exact detail just now, but I will capture that as an action. We'll bring that back. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Charles. We'll look forward to an update on that. I think that's everybody. So I think we'll go to the recommendations, please. So are we willing to agree in two, am I in the right, hang on a sec. Got mixed up my pages here. Yeah, I was correct. 2.1, our members content that we have 2.1 reviewed the summary of performance for the Children and Families Justice Service Plan for the period 1st April 24 to 30th September 24, which includes council plan delivery, service plan delivery, change and improvement activities, success measures. That includes service-specific, council-wide, including health and safety and local government benchmarking framework, and the management of risks within the services risk register in Appendix 1. And in 2.2, agree the proposed amendments to the current social work service plan measures in Appendix 3. Happy to agree, everyone? Thank you. So we go on to item number 8, Social Work Scotland setting the bar reports. Following the work undertaken nationally, led by Social Work Scotland last year, we updated elected members at this committee on the findings of the research report, which sought to address some fundamental questions voiced by social work members, namely, can our workforce realistically work with people in the way that they're trained to do and in line with the aims of Scotland's legislation and policy? Secondly, how much work is too much for social workers? This report sets out the work we're progressing locally to address the findings and areas we need to further consider. It's worth noting that the Scottish Government have not formally commented on the research report, nor the indicative caseload numbers, while ministers have referenced the research at various points, and the research findings remain simply that. Charles and Rebecca and Avril are available to answer any questions. Do members have any questions they'd like to ask? Councillor Dorward, please.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks for the report. It's interesting to note, and thank you for that, Chair, that Scottish Government haven't yet commented on this because the statistics are extremely interesting. And you say that how much work is too much work. So going to page 172, 4.9, it's a table that looks at caseloads. I would say that you're saying how much work is too much work is quite appropriate here, because the caseloads in D&G seem to be way above the average or indicative caseloads set out in setting the bar. I can probably guess why some of these reasons are. It's lack of recruitment, retention, etc., shortages in staff. But it would be useful to know more about why this is the case, because that obviously means that if setting the bar is saying the indicative caseload is below what our staff are doing, how is that affecting staff, and how does that affect the, again, it's not about dissing staff, but how does that affect the level of care they can provide when they've got bigger caseloads than the average caseload? Thank you.
I'll pass that over to the team. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Dorward, for that. It's social work's a unique service in terms of our statutory responsibilities. That what we would call the front door referral that comes in. We don't have, like other services, we have a waiting list. We serve that need at that point. It's part of our professional responsibilities, public protection duties, responsibilities. And we have a set amount of resource and capacity that can support that level of need. And when there is an increase in need through communities, through a different range of different factors, that there are various pressure points. It's also around the strength of other areas of partners and multi-agency partners in terms of the offer around for families, and that has been pressurised through different aspects, both from adults and children. We allocate our work, and you'll see that will be based on the number of qualified social workers, because the qualified social workers are a protected function in their assessment and planning role, and we cannot allocate particular areas of work to paraprofessionals or family support workers who do fantastic areas of work and support for families, but the nature of the professional role, it has to be a professional social worker. And what you'll see at periods of times is, because of that and the priority and critical nature of that need, where we don't ask, where our philosophy is not to ask people to do the impossible, we do ask our staff at times to do the impossible in terms of the capacity and the workload that they have. And it's a unique situation that we have around the resources that are allocated in Dumfries and Galloway, and I suppose drawing attention to 4.14 around that sort of time and motion study, because we have a huge amount of capacity that is set in place around travel and for admin duties and responsibilities, effectively close to 2 days a week that we are spending in these areas. And the very nature of the rural nature of Dumfries and Galloway is we're a higher charge issue around that in comparison to urban areas. So as I said, we've got statutory responsibilities at the heart of our role. We don't have the luxury of saying no at times, and we have to meet that need where it is presenting. I think where our frustration is, we would love to be in an area where we're doing more early and effective intervention further up at the community area, rather than where we are just now, and that's we did need a huge change of how social work resources are managed. Thanks.
Thanks. Can I just let Stephen Morgan come in? Thanks.
I just want to make one specific point, and this is the indicative caseload as per the research, as opposed to what the Scottish average would be. So when we look at other authority areas, then they will be similarly challenged by this. So just to clarify that point, this is what the research says it should be, as opposed to what the average is.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Charles. Thanks, Stephen, for that. I think the other interesting bit, I was going to ask a question on 4.14, but you've explained it anyway. But the other question is that one of the comment is prevention is probably all of our responsibility, not just social workers, society's responsibility. We're not doing very well there. I get where you're coming from as an ex-governor of a prison a wee while ago now, but you couldn't say no. Whoever was remanded or convicted and sent to your prison, you just opened the doors and accepted them, even if you were overcrowded. And I think that's a sad indictment where the prisons are and where social work services are today of society, and how we're not getting it right, and probably not having enough money there either. The other thing I was going to ask about 4.14 was the hours worked per week are 44.65, which is, as far as I'm aware, way above what we're meant to be doing. Even if you're on an all-hours worked contract, which some people probably are, I used to be. But I think is it a 35-hour week that the frontline staff do. So is there anything we can do, apart from making folk do everything by teams, to reduce that? Thank you.
Councillor Dorward, thanks for that and the observations made, and it's not comfortable reading to see that. In an ideal situation, we would have that as close to the 36-hour contracted week that our staff would have. We recently had a couple of thematic inspections from Care Inspector, and I think their observation was that our staff go above and beyond at the heart of the relationships. We can't underestimate what that means, and that's additional hours. I'm incredibly appreciative and thankful for that, but I don't take that for granted. And with the, for our staff, they do need to see some of this changing, because the report does highlight the pressures that have around it. And I know the national research from Social Work Scotland talked about that sort of that moral panic that our social workers hold in terms of that risk and level of need. And at times it doesn't, I think, even stop at that. There are, I think, probably other times where workers are through the digital connection, digital age, they're going in and doing pieces of work beyond that, which doesn't sit comfortably at all. So this is one part of a wider national area, which interesting around the development of a national social work agency in the future, and how that provides leadership in this area to connect us in, to try and balance out the pressure that is on the role of the social worker and family support worker. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's really heartening to hear, and we know the amount of effort that the teams make, and we really are grateful to that. There's a real social responsibility for people in social work, and we see it all happening all the time. So huge thanks to all the teams for the efforts that they make. I would like to ask Councillor McFarlane to come in. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jen. I'd just echo your words. I think the staff are to be commended for the work that they do. 4.6 on page 172, the fourth bullet point says, unpaid overtime is the norm. And we spoke earlier in relation to the fact that we are making savings because we've got vacancies and such like. And of course, when we have the vacancies, we're expecting staff to sort of fill those gaps. And I think it's a sad indictment on us that they are working unpaid overtime, but I think we should be recompensing them for the time that they do put into this, because it really is unacceptable that we're expecting people to work virtually an extra day per week on top of their hours. So I do think that we should perhaps have a look at that. There was another question, if I can think what it was. Yeah, I was wondering on page 174, 414.8, talking about Magic Notes pilot and how it's an AI tool that should hopefully improve things and make things a little bit more streamlined and address some of those issues in that table previously. And I'm wondering if I could get a little bit of an insight into that. So can we pay our staff? And what does Magic Notes do? Thank you.
Stephen, please.
Yeah, thanks for the two questions. The issues highlighted at 4.6 were from the national research in terms of unpaid overtime being the norm. It would be utterly disingenuous for me to say that the extra 9 or 10 hours that our staff are doing each week are paid, because quite often they're not. There are certain circumstances, if people ask for, to do work in advance, where we can authorise overtime, but much of this is where staff haven't claimed. If that's something that councillors would like to consider, then we can certainly feed into the budget setting process what that would look like, but that would clearly mean reductions elsewhere across what we do if there is extra money going in there to pay for the overtime. But I'll discuss that at the senior leadership team in terms of what that might look like and how we can gather the data. In relation to Magic Notes, Councillor McFarlane, I think I've already covered what it is. It is an artificial intelligence tool that's used to record meetings, conversations, and then put them into pro forma reports, and that can save up to 8 hours a week for social workers, depending on where they are. So if that's 8 hours here, that reduces staff time down to near what we would expect them to do. But that's looking at an innovative solution to get us to a position we should already be in. Doesn't stop us looking for those innovative solutions, but it is really it's a social work tool. The pilot's going well. I mentioned earlier that we'll have some specific detail and data in the coming weeks, and we can include that in a future report to this committee in terms of the benefits. I'm also working with colleagues in procurement to see what it would look like if it is successful in terms of us procuring the service moving forward. Also doing work with Scotland Excel and nationally about what it might look like for a Once for Scotland approach. Having said that, if it works for Dumfries and Galloway and the price is achievable and realistic, then we wouldn't put a barrier such as that in front of our staff from having such a valuable tool. So I haven't gone into the detail about Magic Notes there. Hopefully you heard what I said earlier, Councillor McFarlane, that covered that question.
Thank you very much, Stephen. I think when we look at the figure of 48%, it is high for travel and for telephone calls and administration, case recordings and administration tasks. So I commend the work that you're all doing on Magic Notes, and I think we should see that figure dropping at the next report in February with any luck. But we can't reduce the travel time because, as the team have explained to me, it's really difficult to do that in our region because people do need to meet clients and customers face to face. Moving on to Councillor Scobie, please.
Thanks, Chair. I get a sense of deja vu about it just now because I seem to have read this report some months or some time ago, but there was a paragraph in the previous report that doesn't seem to appear here, and that was when they reach unmanageable levels of more than 50%. And I'm looking at 4.9 in the chart there. In the first one, 2025 is the bar, and we're running with 36 social workers with a 36 caseload. That's anything between 9 or 11 and whatever above the bar. The same in children and family social workers. Are these unmanageable levels, as was the paragraph in the previous report? Because they're not coming down from the previous report, indeed maybe even just going up, if memory serves me correctly. So what do we do at unmanageable levels, and how do we manage? And again, it's maybe highlighted in 4.6, internal waiting lists operated by workers, and then till it reaches crisis point. Crisis point to the individual who needs that service will have a catastrophic effect on them, their mental health and whatever. And again, if we look at 4.7, 82 vacancies, how much would that, had we had full capacity, what would the figures look like with those 82 imposed and us running with full capacity? So, a lot of questions I don't know if I'm able to answer, but it's really around this unmanageable and that we're leaving people to crisis point.
Very worrying and very real points made, Councillor Scobie, in terms of that. And the Setting the Bar report does speak about unmanageable levels, and for adult social work and children and family social work locally, those figures will say against the indicative caseload that there are elements of unmanageableness, if I call it that. You've seen, from the work that Charles and colleagues have done in children's services, the 414.1 shows that we're getting more than a day a week extra from each of our social work staff in children and families, as an example, which manages some of that unmanageableness, not in an appropriate way, but it's managed in that respect. We will also see impacts on practice. So I know that, we have a number of outstanding reviews, in adult social work, for example, and that does have an impact. And that's one of the ways that the unmanageableness gets managed. It's difficult decisions about prioritising the immediate need as opposed to an ongoing review, as an example. And this is why we are absolutely bringing this to this table to highlight the issues. But it doesn't mean that we're just highlighting them. We are looking at, so I've mentioned Magic Notes, and Chair of the committee said that we might see some differences in the data because of that come February. Just to emphasise, we're trying that with a very small team, so it won't actually have an impact by February. But we're doing things like that. We're looking at how can we not do some of the work that we do. But the problem we have right now, as Charles Rocks has said today, is we can't say no. We will not operate a waiting list for statutory assessments. And we therefore have to look at what do we do to support our staff? How can we reduce some of the bureaucracy, etc.? And those are the elements that we're concentrating on right now. We're also looking at, we've improved our Grow Your Own system locally. We've got a career guide for our staff across the piece. So we are looking at things that will incrementally start to turn this picture around. I can't give you hard and fast timescales in terms of what that will be, but we are constantly looking at this data. We're speaking to our staff, we're looking at the experiences that they have, and we try and nudge things in the right direction as we can. I don't know, Charles or Rebecca, if there's anything you'd like to add from your professional perspectives and your areas of work.
Yeah, just one final thing to add, Councillor Scobie. You know, we need to look at this from a quality lens. That we done this time and motion studies because we wanted to kind of set ourselves a target about the percentage of time that our social workers and family support workers were actually spending with children and adults, because that's how we achieve positive change, by being in there and developing these relationships. And fundamentally, our children have a right to have a relationship with their social worker. Particularly our children in care have a right to have a relationship with their social worker. And this highlights that we are still some way off achieving that. Now, there are some areas that we can have some quick wins we can try and influence and support. It doesn't take away from the fact is that there is a level of need that's still come through that is probably a higher level of complexity that we have experienced, particularly within a children and families context. And that's through a kind of increase of impact of poverty, the impact of cost of living, the pressures that families have received around their own mental health and well-being, in addition to quite a significant increase in neurodiversity. So that has been a combination of factors that's been there, and we still have a professional and statutory responsibility to allocate that work. I think what it does highlight is, you know, we have an amazing staff group and a staff team that provide that and respond when we ask. What this report is highlighting, both from a local context, and hopefully this will feed into a national context as well, as the ask and the call from that in terms of how we need to resource that, but also how there require additional investment in that early intervention that sits beyond the front door of social work, in terms of the sustainability of that can help kind of navigate and deviate away families from requiring social work in the first place. But I would go back to that rights-based approach for children. They have a right to have that relationship, and that evidence is not saying is we're able to support that the way that we would want to. Thanks.
Thank you. And Rebecca, please, thanks.
Thank you. I think probably the only things that I would add to what Charles and Stephen have articulated is that obviously in adult care, the demographics and unmet need are seen in terms of the level of caseload, and we absolutely acknowledge the need for a preventative agenda, and we've spoke about this at at different intervals today in terms of how do we do that when we're crisis management, and the reality is that we have to do that running alongside the way we operate currently. But I think what's useful to understand in terms of actually it'd be disingenuous to say that people don't have high caseloads, but the other side of that is the support that we try to give them, which is a softer approach in terms of mental health for staff. So we have multiple things that we provide. We have mental health, what are they called? Champions, thank you, who link in with staff on a regular basis. We access to our colleagues in mental health that provide support. Chief Social Work Officer implemented mindfulness sessions for our staff group. So these are the things that we're trying to do in the background to support people as we're moving forward to implement changes. Thank you.
Thanks, Rebecca. Come back in quickly, Councillor Scobie, please.
Yeah, and I don't underestimate the gravitas, the amount that's needed. And I picked up on a number of words there, and unmanageable was one. Statutory responsibilities and crisis management against demand, the demand that's out there. And when do the figures that we are looking at just now, as I presume that's why the report's before us, when do these reach that stage where there could be an intervention from Scottish Government in terms of special measures? So in respect of these figures that are here before us, obviously they bring our attention, and there's mitigating measures in here. But when do they reach that we are really at that stage?
Thank you.
What height do they go to in terms of these? I think they're high, far too high just now. But when do they reach that stage?
I'll let you come in, Stephen. Thanks, Councillor Scobie.
What we've got to remember is the indicative caseload is an indicative caseload based on professional research. The chair of the committee highlighted at the start of the meeting that the Scottish Government haven't made comment or commitment to that figure, and I can't comment as to why that would be. It's not appropriate. What I can say though is when we get inspected for our social work functions, we ordinarily do well. There are some exceptions to that, and we come on to that later in the agenda, but we tend to do well. So we locally are nowhere near, you use the term special measures, Councillor Scobie. It's a phrase I don't like to use, but we're nowhere near that locally. I can assure you of that. What the government are doing though, they're working in partnership with Social Work Scotland, with the Scottish Association of Social Work, and with COSLA, to look at the national issues facing social work and social care across Scotland. There is an awful lot of work being done in the background. Social Work Scotland, as my professional body, hosts the Social Work Education Programme, which is looking at how we educate people to become social workers, what the figures are. So there's a whole system in terms of education, training, post-qualification support that needs to really bolster the social work profession. And I speak deliberately about the social work profession because that's the caseloads we're speaking about in this report. Money's been mentioned a lot today. If you said to me how many social workers short are you and how much would it cost, and I give you that figure and this council gives us that money, I still wouldn't be able to recruit those social workers because they don't exist. So it is a national issue, and the Scottish Government are looking at that with the partners I've mentioned and others. So I am hopeful that these issues are being addressed. Well, I'm not hopeful. I'm confident that these issues are being addressed, and I'm hopeful that in the coming months and years we'll have some solutions as we move forward. And that will also help us locally as well as the national picture.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Before we go on to the next question, I think we're hearing the words whole family approach, early intervention, mental health champions, youth workers, youth inquiry service, and it's back to that whole social work, the way they work well with the integration, and we do see that in Dumfries and Galloway Council going forward, so hopefully we'll see some positivity next year. But I do understand the stress and angst that everybody is under at the moment. And I think we're going to Councillor Young next, please. Thanks.
Well, thank you, Chair. Looking at the table on page 173, it's obviously a very pressurised occupation, being a social worker in Dumfries and Galloway at present. Now, I'm well aware that the Scottish secondary school teacher has a maximum class contact time of 22.5 hours per week, but obviously social works are exceeding that in terms of family contacts. And although we can't change salaries, etc. nationally, I wonder if we could improve our working conditions within the social work department. For instance, something simple like saying, don't respond to emails out with working hours. Also, perhaps equivalent to the no class contact time, a couple of hours a day where you have no pressures on you, where you have a sort of catch up and you're in charge of what you do during these non-contact times. And a final wee silly point probably. It talks on bottom of page 173, if it's a social work's time spent on non-negotiable travel time, does that mean essential travel?
Thank you very much, Councillor Young. Over to yourself, Charles. Thanks.
Yes, thanks for that, Councillor. A couple of points. I think we would never encourage any out of office working in that nature. We have to appreciate the diligence and professionalisms of our social workers and support workers that go above that. I am clear in my expectations as I can't ask people to do the impossible, whilst I understand that people do actually try and achieve the impossible through that task. Our aim is to try and work through some of these challenges that sit within the task of the professional social worker, particularly their interaction with the systems that we use to try and improve that, looking at the time spent in areas where we can influence. So there will be some work that we'll be doing in these areas. the travel time is not an easy answer to that. I would say that any time spent for a social worker, if it's just to provide that sort of contact with the child around a relationship, that's essential. That's part of what we do. That's how we influence and get the trust of our families and children to achieve change. But we need to create additional capacity for social workers to be able to achieve that. And the other thing just to highlight is creating a really good, strong, caring culture at the heart of our leadership. And I think that's really important for us as a senior management group within social work services under the Directorate, is that we get that condition right. We kind of recognise and praise the work that our social workers and support workers do, because it's a tough landscape out there, and we need to support that resilience through these challenges and show that appreciation. But there are parts where our social workers and support workers need to see light at the end of the tunnel, and some of that will be from a local influence, some of that needs to be through the national leadership, which Stephen has highlighted and profiled. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Charles. That was helpful. And the last question from Councillor Slater, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's about working extra hours and not getting paid. This is something I've done for many years in business, but why I did that, I care. And these people do that because they care about people they're having to look after, and they will do it. As regards in taking calls out with hours, they probably will take calls out with hours because they care about the people they look after and they have a pride in their work. Maybe they should maybe be able to maybe have more overtime as such, but if that's not possible, it's just the fact it's in people's nature. These people do that work and they care, as I said, and they will do it out of hours or within hours, and that'll happen. So it's just wish they maybe could get more compensation or more payment for that. But as you say at this time, that's not possible. So these people do that work out with their hours to get things done. Thank you.
Yes, it's a point well made, Councillor Slater. We see it in social work and obviously in the care sector as well. People working as carers are taking calls, you know, and doing overtime all the time. It's quite, well, distressing, I suppose, but also it's the nature of the type of amazing people that do these jobs. So we have to thank them from the bottom of our hearts for that. So thank you for that point, and it's well made. So we can now, pardon? Sorry? Yes. So we can now go to the recommendations. Are members happy to 2.1, note the findings of Social Work Scotland's national report, setting the bar and taking the wheel as summarised in this? Oh, pardon me, Councillor Dorward.
Thank you, Chair. Can I suggest we had another recommendation? And that's on the back of what you said, is that Scottish Government haven't yet responded to these reports, which I find shocking. If that's what you said, I think I got that right, yeah? Can I ask that we add recommendation 2.3, that we write to Scottish Government and ask the Leader of the Administration via COSLA to request, maybe request better than demand, Scottish Government respond to these reports setting the bar and taking the wheel. Because I think that's shocking that we don't have a Scottish Government response, and we are discussing these really serious issues. And if you'll indulge me for a minute, can I also suggest that we don't encourage staff to work additional hours because it's not great for their mental health and mental well-being. They do it because they are there to make a difference. I absolutely understand and get that, but we need to, and it's challenging, we don't have any, employ more staff, not encourage folk or to do additional hours unless absolutely necessary. I know it's there and it has to be there just now, but I suggest that's a long-term or medium-term option. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, I think, well, 2.3 I would agree with Councillor Durwood, and if you wanted to ping that over to the governance, is that okay? I think we're happy with that, there's no rush. But and on your last part, I don't think anyone's encouraging anyone to work out with the hours actually, but I'll let Stephen come in.
No, Councillor Durwood, you're absolutely right that we don't want to encourage, and part of the reason for doing the study was to give us the evidence as to what staff are doing, so we can then look at what we need to do about that. So we're not encouraging people to do so. Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Slater, if you can make it quick, because we're really needing to go for a comfort break, and we've also got another meeting at 2 o'clock, so thanks.
No, it wasn't the fact that I wanted people to work outside hours, but the fact is they do that because, as I say, they care about people and they want to see these people get better or better looked after, and that's why these people do it. Thank you.
Yes, I understand where you're coming from entirely, and I think you are absolutely correct. Thank you, Councillor Slater. So with 2.1, note the findings of the Social Work Scotland's national report setting the bar and taking the wheel as summarised in this report, and 2.2, consider mitigating areas locally to support social workers as set out at 4.7 to 4.15, and 2.3, to write to the Scottish Government to request a response to this particular report. Is that correct, Councillor Dorward? And we'll have that properly in writing before the close of the meeting. Thank you. Could I just ask that we can all have a comfort break for 5 minutes, please, and return back here at 1 o'clock, please. Thanks. 1:05 even. Okay, thank you, members. So we're on to agenda item number 9 now, a commissioning strategy for children and families social work services. Elected members are asked to approve this outcome-based children and families commissioning strategy together with the plan on delivering this, noting the strategic commissioning direction with a key focus on recognising the impact of poverty on our communities. We must take a whole family approach to achieve the best outcomes for our children and young people. And finally, empowering individuals to find their own solutions. Charles, do you have anything further that you'd like to add, please?
Just briefly, just to say a big appreciation to Avril and Irene Hurst, who've done a huge amount of work in this, and also to a colleague from another local authority who helped to support some of the benchmarking in this area. But this is a really important area of work. It probably will support members with a sort of understanding of what commissioning is and helping us shape our sort of aims and objectives and priorities for the coming period. And just to add that the next step from this will be about the delivery of this, and we'll kind of develop a delivery plan that will look to achieve what we need to achieve. Thanks.
I think it's really important that we acknowledge that, Charles. I know the work you've all put into this in particular. Did you say Kirsty and Avril? No, I couldn't catch the first name.
Irene.
Irene, thank you, Irene. Sorry, I just didn't catch what you said. And I know that you've made some journeys to see various other options that we can look at as a council. So thanks to all of you for the time. So do members have any questions? Councillor McFarlane, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you for that, Charles. And the key thing is the commissioning, and it's quite clear that on page 177, 4.1, position was we were £853,000 overspent, and we're really struggling financially in relation to this. And as we said earlier, that the current position is unsustainable, and we'll have to try and do something about it. However, with the UK government changing the national insurance contributions as they have, I see that we've got a lot of third sector organisations assisting us with this, and I'm wondering how it's going to impact on them and how it's going to impact on us and how we deliver those services and commission them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor McFarlane. Stephen, Charles, please.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor McFarlane. We, Dumfries and Galloway is enriched with some fantastic third sector organisations. We've briefly had conversations with the Chief Executive for Third Sector, Alan Webben, on this, and an opportunity for what these priorities are, that we put this in, and we put that out through a collaborative framework. So opportunities will be there for Third Sector to kind of very much match what that vision and ambition is, and how we will then implement that. So there will be opportunities there, but I appreciate this will be resource-led as well in terms of what resources we do have. We have to maximise that as best we can to the priorities, and that's shaped as part of our service delivery, and it's part of a multi-agency group within the Children's Services Plan as well, that we're hoping to achieve the priorities, but very much looking to kind of improve the dialogue in these areas with third sector to help profile what our aims will be. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Charles. That's very concise. And do we have any other questions? Are you okay with that, Councillor McFarlane? Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know if I am, because ultimately, what we've got is an increase in cost with a finite resource. And I'm just wondering, is it actually, I know we have got some really good third sector organisations, and I know Alan's made a difference since he's turned up, but I do wonder if we're actually going to get as much bang for our buck as we would have had those changes not come in.
Yeah, I think what this, ultimately, the aim of this framework is to try and achieve that better value in terms of our priorities. So what we'll have behind that is an increased oversight in terms of how we align that to our priorities and achieve best value. So Councillor McFarlane, the intention will be to get better value for the buck, as you say, and we will hold an improved level of accountability for achieving outcomes at the heart of our delivery. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Charles. I think on page 191, all commissioning decisions will be evidence-based, and at the end of the day, this situation is being reflected across the whole country with national insurance. So if we keep outsourcing is still going to be a higher figure either way. So that would be my kind of argument. But obviously, I think we need to make sure that the commissioning decisions will be evidence-based, and that will be the case, will it, Charles? Could you just confirm that? Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely evidence-based. We'll match this around a lot of our intelligence and data about where we have to target that, but it'll be evidence-based, it'll be fully transparent, accountable in terms of what our commissioning work will be, and it will give fair and equitable opportunities for all third sector partners in terms of what the aims and objectives will be. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Charles. It also says in 196 that it will be informed as to the market through market research and benchmarking, as well as setting the vision and key objectives for the procurement activity. So I think we'll have to hand our trust over to you on that one and wait till the report comes back. But do you wish to add to that, Councillor McFarlane?
Yeah, thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that. So anyone got any further questions? I think we're fine to go. So we can now go, thank you very much for the report and the hard work that's been done on that. We can now go to the recommendations. Are members happy to approve an outcome-based children and families commissioning strategy for 24 to 2018 as attached in the appendix? Thank you, Councillor Slater. Thank you. We go on to item 10, Fostering and Adoption Inspection 2024. The report sets out the outcome of the Fostering and Adoption Inspection, which took place between 24th of August 24 and 1st of October 24. The inspection was carried out by 2 inspectors from the Care Inspectorate, and as a follow-up to the previous inspection that was carried out in November and December 23. Following discussion with the service, the Care Inspectorate have separated fostering and adoption into 2 separate reports to highlight the unique differences between the 2 parts of the service. Both reports evidence small improvements in the overall gradings, with the vision and ambitions for the services being recognised as emerging. However, key improvements are still required, with a number of requirements being set by the Care Inspectorate within the service. We must recognise that the timescale from the last inspection was very short to implement all improvements, but that progress has been made by the team during this time. Stephen and Charles, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Just briefly before I hand over to Charles, the timescales between the inspection of 23 and this one are very, very short, and much shorter than the Care Inspectorate would normally have. And that was actually at our own request. We wanted them to come back to do a full inspection as opposed to a progress report. And that meant that we carried significant risk that the gradings would remain the same. So although the actual gradings are not good, we have seen marginal improvement. But what Charles can talk to in relation to answer any questions, as well as a brief introduction, is that we have made progress in all areas. We just haven't made complete progress. So Charles, I'll hand over to yourself for a bit more detail about that, please.
Thanks, Stephen. Just to add to this, it's been a difficult time in context. The inspection we previously noted at the end of 2023 had an impact on staff who take great pride in the work they undertake. There's been a huge amount of work around the improvement actions. And Stephen highlighted the Care Inspectorate don't measure against partial progress, they have to measure on full progress. And the timeline from the inspection that completed the end of last year to the revisit of this year, it just wasn't the time it was required to make the improvements we were looking at at this time. That being said, the staff team and the management and leadership around this has been exemplary in terms of moving this forward. There are still areas, big areas for improvement, particularly around the requirements we've got and the reporting we've got around the safeguarding themes. And we take that incredibly seriously in terms of our responsibilities in this area. And there will be an improved level of quality assurance oversight that will go through our own social work governance group arrangements to ensure that we're on track for the revisit that the Care Inspectorate may make in May. But again, I want to kind of caveat that with, in terms of a very difficult context and landscape, and an appreciation for the time and effort that staff have made in terms of the improvements over that period of time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Charles. I'm really grateful for your assurances there. So don't think we've any further questions, so we can now go to the recommendations. Members are asked to 2 point... Oh, pardon me, sorry. Councillor Dashper, apologies, would you like to come in?
No, that's all right, Chair. My question's really, I mean, you know, we get this report in front of us and it is quite concerning to see the result of it. But my question's more about sort of, you know, in our capacity as corporate parents with the responsibility for looking after these children and stuff, is there anything that the social work governance group can do to keep us more informed regularly? You know, instead of waiting on reports like this coming to committee, is there, you know, like maybe bi-monthly updates or just anything so we can have greater on the ball oversight in our capacity as the corporate parents? Thank you.
Stephen Morgan, please.
Yeah, Councillor Dashper, clearly when we've got a report as significant as this, it's just within your gift to have information. What I would suggest is we do that out with the committee structure, so it's not a formal report coming back every single time, but we update this committee and all members either via a seminar or indeed by regular briefing in terms of achievements that we're making against the targets. Hopefully that's acceptable to colleagues, to members rather.
Thank you very much, Stephen. I think sorry, Councillor Dashper, just 1 second, if you don't mind. I think that's the right way to go. The last thing we want to do is be putting on more pressure because we're really under time constraints, but I think that's a good solution. But obviously, Councillor Dashper, I'd like to hear your feedback as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. No, I'm not requesting reports to committee, but briefings are fine. Something informal, but just something more regular for us to keep in touch. And if we could get that noted as a recommendation, Chair.
Yes, I'd be happy to put that in as a recommendation. Are all members happy with that? And thank you for the suggestion. We'll add that in, Claire. Is that okay? So we're now going to go to the recommendation. Members are asked to 2.1, note the continued improvements required across the service as detailed within the care inspection reports. 2.2, note the challenges faced by the services as outlined in paragraphs 4.3 and 4.4, and the positive areas of strengths as outlined in paragraph 4.7. 2.3, note the areas for continued improvement as outlined in paragraphs 4.3 and 4.11, and 2.4, agree to more regular seminars with regards to the status of fostering adoption going forward, and updates rather than seminars, pardon me, and we will put that in, and we'll put it in the chat if that's okay with governance and everyone here today. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Thank you myself. Thanks, everyone. So we now go on to item 11, is the Children's House Inspection 2024. And this report sets out the findings of the Hardthorne Road Children's House Inspection, which took place between the 24th and 25th of September 2024. This was an unannounced inspection which was carried out by one inspector from the Care Inspectorate. The report highlights a number of improvements the House have made over the last 12 months, recognised by some key messages that the Care Inspectorate noted from those experiencing care. Our children were safe. Our children were experiencing nurturing and compassionate care. Our children had connections to the people that were important to them, and our children were able to access supports and activities. This service is incredibly proud of the improvements the carers and managers have led on over the last 12 months. And we thank you most sincerely for that. Charles, do you have any additional comments you'd like to make?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, just a level of pride, and I suppose the headlines will be around the kind of grading for the Children's House may not necessarily be where we would want at this time, but given where the House was 12 months ago in terms of the challenges that was around in terms of our incredible ask in terms of children being matched within the Children's House on an unplanned basis and a crisis basis, very much recognising the level of stability that the House has brought, but the level of care and nurture for our children and young people. This is a really positive report, and we absolutely welcome this and recognise the areas for improvement that the Care Inspectorate have identified. It's been a tough 12 months for the team, but a kind of appreciation to the carers and to the interim house manager who's done a fantastic piece of leadership with the team to put them in a place where they are able to provide a higher level of quality care, and recognising that's an improvement in our grading previously that the care inspector had noted. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Charles, for all of that. Stephen, please, thanks.
Yeah, just want to add to what what Charles has said, because clearly, you know, gradings previously had dropped to week, and that was post-pandemic. We had significant issues for this particular children's house in relation to almost being a service of last resort. We couldn't pick and choose in terms of where we were placing children. The ability to place children further afield, which we've already discussed today, isn't something that we would want to do. But following the pandemic, it was even more challenging. So the grades did drop, and that had a significant impact on the team. So as Charles has said, he's incredibly proud of the team, and particularly the interim manager, who's done a remarkable job. So even though grade of adequate and good might not be where we want to be, that reflects a remarkable improvement. So just wanted to add that to what Charles had already said.
Absolutely, Stephen. Thank you very much for that. Councillor Jordan, you have a question. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you for this report and for the additional comments. I just wanted to ask about the young people that are in the home there. What integration are they getting into community groups? Is there any of that to help support them and support the community to understand how they can help? Thank you.
Thank you. Over to you, Charles.
Thanks, Councillor Jordan and Chair. Yeah, so we've got 4 children currently within the children's house with varying levels of need. Some of the children are absolutely connected in through the local community because they attend our local education provision in the area, but some of the children have got quite significant complex needs through their experiences of adversity, trauma. I need a high level of support. I know there's been some discussions with Councillor Stevenson as the children's house sits within her ward area about opportunities, about further connections that the community are wishing to reach out with. And I really appreciated Councillor Stevens' connection in this, because it was through an absolute moral lens of about what we could do to own the children in our children's house, and the communities ask about what they could do more. There's a slight fragility to that of some of the children's needs about how we introduce that, but a real appetite of thinking a wee bit differently. And we really appreciate it because that's different from previous experiences I've had around our children's houses, which is it's not always been that as welcoming as what I experienced there. So yeah, I hope to kind of connect in with Councillor Stevenson soon to begin to think about opportunities to do that. But that needs to be done around a sort of mindfulness around the children's needs as well, in terms of entering into these connections. Thank you.
That's really helpful, Charles. Thank you for that. I don't think we've got any further questions. Yes, we do. Pardon me. Sorry, Councillor Tashber.
Sorry, Chair, it's me again. I'm just wondering, because I'm reading this and being based in Stranraer, I'm not familiar with this specific location. Is there anything that the social work group can do to provide a sort of a briefing or something to elected members on this building? What does it look like? What do the rooms look like? What facilities are exactly available here for the children who are resident? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll go to Charles again. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely, Councillor. We would be really open ideas of what would meet that need for yourself in terms of kind of having that sort of visual sense. I'm incredibly protective. I've put a kind of a ring fence around the house in terms of visits, and I think even I need permission to come for a visit, because we need to appreciate this as the children's homes, but we can think of a different way of capturing that and trying to get a sort of visual sense from yourself, but also what's behind the curtain in terms of that level of care and support. So happy to think of ideas going into next year around a seminar, and we could look at that from a wider residential offer as well, in terms of what external residential care and some of the situations and examples where we are into a situation we have to make decisions for children. So happy to think of that and happy to hear any ideas that would be a benefit. Thanks.
Thanks, Charles. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. Do we have any further questions? Councillor Martin, who's first? Councillor Dorward, I think, was before Councillor McFarlane. Thanks.
Thanks, Chair. Just thank you for the report. The team are being congratulated on achieving an improvement in inspection ratings. That's significant and fantastic, actually. Well done to them, because we tend to sometimes focus on the less positive things that people do. Just a comment on 4.1, page 244. Descriptor of significant challenges are due in part to the closure of the Children's House in Cairnryan. So I think it's obvious there that adds fuel to the fire in terms of we need to increase local authority, other run children's house provision in our region. I look forward to the February report. Question to 4.3, page 244. And you mentioned this, Charles, about the interim manager seems to be doing a fantastic job, which is great. But I would ask how long is interim before it becomes permanent? I know that's an operational issue, but any interim appointment can be quite challenging for the individual and for the staff that they work with. And they seem to be doing an amazing role, especially as at 4.6 on page 245. A big role of the manager is the last bullet point of 4.6. Managers to regularly provide quality assurance of care plans, risk assessments, matching and admissions processes. It's a massive responsibility. So I think interim's an interesting one. I know there's an operational thing there, but would there be consideration to looking, how long is that before it's an unstable kind of way to have somebody in a position for a year, I would suggest. Thank you.
Over to yourself, Stephen. Thank you.
Yeah, Councillor Dorward, thanks for that. There is an operational reason as to why we have an interim manager, and it wouldn't be appropriate for me to go into any detail around that, but we fully accept your point.
Thank you, Stephen. Councillor McFarlane, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Really, just to pick up on the comments that Charles made in relation to visiting the home, because as he commented, it is the home of these young people. So I was just wondering if potentially what we could do is do some sort of video from them. I don't know if we could anonymise them or whatever, and it actually gives a feel of their experience in the facility and how it impacts upon them.
Thanks, Councillor McFarlane.
Thanks.
Yeah, it's a good thought. I'll just ask.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor McFarlane. Listen, I really appreciate the care and attention that members have for our most valuable children. I suppose from their experience, there are many examples that comes out of this either through the promise of the 10,000 Voices or other areas where they have highlighted how it feels to be living within a children's house, both in terms of opportunities, but areas where it's not been where we want. They're very similar messages across the board in what our children and young people would say. We can revisit that as maybe part of a seminar. We can ask the children and young people if there's anything they wanted to kind of send a message for members in terms of that, in terms of their ask. But I know that there's been a revisit around the Champions Board, and some of our children who live in the Children's House are representative on our Champions Board, and that's a really fantastic group that myself and Stephen and Councillor Dorward had the opportunity to be at recently, and they are incredibly vocal and will tell us very straight what their expectations of us are as corporate parents. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else wishing to come in? No. Thank you very much, members. Thank you very much to the team for the responses to this report. So we can now go to the recommendations. 2.1, we note the Care Inspectorate evaluations from the unannounced visit which took place on 24th and 25th September 24 as outlined in the appendix on sections 3.4 and 3.5. 2.2, we note the relatively recent challenges faced by the Children's House and the positive progress made this year, resulting in the key areas of strength highlighted by the inspection as outlined in section 4.1 to 4.5. And finally, 2.3, note the areas for improvement as outlined in section 4.6 and the immediate steps taken by senior managers as outlined in 4.7 to 4.9. Thank you, members. Oh, Councillor McFarlane, you have your hand up again. Thanks.
Sorry, Chair, like I say.
Thank you very much. So we go to item number 12. This is the Dumfries and Galloway Public Protection Committee report by the independent chair. This is the biennial report for 22 to 24, which myself and Councillor Howie sit on. I just wanted to say before I started that Hamish and his team have worked really, really hard, and his reports have been, the Dumfries Public Protection Committee reports have been used as exemplars across Scotland, and as a result, requests have been made for guidance and support by other child protection committees across Scotland to assist in the implementation of the data set. So thank you very much for your hard work, Hamish. Today, though, we're looking at this report in front of us and the reporting to the Chief Officers Group. Public Protection, the Public Protection Committee shapes the delivery and review of multi-agency public protection work in Dumfries and Galloway. Section 46 of the Adult Support and Protection Act Scotland 2007 requires the convener or chair of adult protection committees to produce a biennial report analysing, reviewing and commenting on APC functions and activities in the preceding 2 years. The Public Protection Committee fulfils that obligation. In Dumfries and Galloway, the committee provides further child protection and violence against women and girls biennial reports to be complementary to this commentary, and these are aligned to mirror the statutory requirements of the Adult Protection Biennial Report. These three published reports by Hamish McGee as PPC Independent Chair are tabled for your information. Hamish McGee will provide an overview and answer any questions. Hamish, have you got anything to comment before questions? Thanks.
Thanks very much for your kind words, Chair. Very much appreciated. And also just to say that there's a bigger team, much larger than myself, that I'll take that back to, so thank you. Afternoon, members. It's been my privilege to be the independent chair of the Public Protection Committee for just over 3 years. This is the second set of biennial reports that I have delivered to yourselves. And as the chair said, they cover the period April 22 to March 24, and there is significant work has been undertaken since that point as well. The key point here is that there is only one report that's required through legislation. The other two we do because we feel it's the correct thing, and also because within Dumfries and Galloway we recognise that there are 3 pillars of public protection. So it's not just about adult protection, it includes child protection and violence against women and girls. It's an area I'm also, I've written to Scottish Government colleagues to ask that in future, rather than having 3 reports, that you would have 1 report for public protection, which would be all-encompassing and much more holistic. And we're getting very positive feedback on that as we speak. Again, these are shared, these are my reports. They are shared for you for your information. If you'll indulge me, I would like to say a little bit more about the partnership. Over the last 2 years, the partnership has continued to develop. It now has very strong arrangements and relationships that have been well embedded. The commitment from the chief officers, the wider partners and the public protection team, in my opinion, is to be commended in the way in which they've embraced this and taken it forward. As you indicated in your introduction, Chair, D&G continues to innovate and is at the forefront of everything that is being developed nationally in this arena. We've been instrumental in the development of things like the adult support and protection and child protection minimum data sets. And in fact, we have a unique set of data now in terms of violence against women and girls, which the Improvement Service in Scotland are looking to take forward nationally. You'll also be aware of the formation of the National Public Protection Leadership Group through Scottish Government, and the number of inquiries that we're having across Scotland to our way of working. You can see that the public protection agenda now, the way in which we work, is being adopted nationally, so we are the driver around all of that. We've also now got a really robust strategic plan that gives us a clear focus for the next 3 years. We have a number of agreed priorities, including, importantly, the involvement of people with lived experience. within co-production. We're also looking at self-neglect, sexual harm and chronologies, each of which are being led by a chief officer and the teams below them. I'd like to recognise the significant work that all partners are doing in keeping the most vulnerable in our community safe, whether that be the statutory partners or our third sector specialist services. They are all working together despite operating in the most complex and challenging times I have ever known in my time in the public sector. And that, sitting through today, has been well articulated across all of this agenda. Thanks very much for allowing me the time to present these to you, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hamish. I would like to just add to that again. I do find this committee, the Public Protection Committee, extremely robust, extremely open and very transparent. It's an open space. I know it's an official meeting, but people are able to alert your particular committee to concerns within our communities that we often find it hard to talk about. So I'd like to thank you for being open-minded, and the rest of your team, and anything we've presented and other members have spoken about, you've always taken forward. So it's most helpful, and I think it does show in your report the results that you've had. So thank you very much for this report. It's very detailed, and I'd like to ask Councillor Slater to speak. Thanks.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your report. The question I have is about stalking, people getting stalked as such, and apparently if it's reported to the police are reluctant to give the names of the person stalking them. So when they go out and about, it could be anybody, somebody just in this room, whatever. So should the police actually give that information out to the person that's being stalked? I have concerns about possibly their life. Thank you.
I'm afraid, as the chair of the independent chair of the Public Protection Committee, I'm not in a position to actually give you an answer to that question, but I'm sure police colleagues would be more than happy to do so.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Slater. There are always issues that need to be raised, but you can either do that through the police if it's a private matter such as that. Thank you, Councillor Dorward.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, Hamish. Thanks for the report. Brilliant. Just pass on again, as with the Chair of this committee, my congratulations, commendations to the team. It's a great report. It's a comprehensive report from a board with a really complex remit, and it's doing really well. Got a question on page 289 regarding increase in child protection activity, table 1. It says the CPI considerations increased by 22% and newly registered children increased by 26%. Can I ask, is this reflected across Scotland or within family council areas, similar council areas? And I also note that parental drug misuse has also been identified as a prevalent vulnerability factor. Is this a new issue or one that's on the increase? Thanks.
Thank you very much, Councillor, for your kind words. For start off with, I know you used to be a very valued member of that committee as well. In terms of the questions that you're asking, I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. They go into the operational side of things, and in terms of the experts in that, you would have to direct that towards someone within child protection. Apologies, it's not an area of knowledge that I have. I'm seeing two people. Would somebody like to answer on my behalf?
Over to you, Charles. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Dorward. I was probably coming to the end of the committee. I thought, okay, pass over to Hamish now, and it'll be the Hamish show. So, yeah, just to probably pick up on that, there has been an increase in our child protection register, and being new in Dumfries and Galloway, I'm really curious about that in terms of where it's been over the last number of years. We've implemented signs of safety as a practice model to support a more strength-based approach to that. So really curious about where that's taken us, and then about maybe some evaluation of that will come out, and the report's highlighting a further audit review activity that the Public Protection Committee's committed to last month. So there'll be kind of some learning themes coming out of that in terms of how quickly are we getting from an early intervention model in terms of that, what can be down to some of the themes we're highlighting and setting the bar in terms of that complex need coming through. In regards to your other question in terms of benchmarking, this did come up in our PQ&I subgroup discussion about how we could then start benchmarking, and we're doing some work around other areas that we've got that we can then look into that. There is an increase in some areas have been stable around the Child Protection Register. What I would also caveat that with is not an exact science. I've been around on oversight of the Child Protection Register now for a number of years, and does it go up? Is it a good thing? Does it decrease? It's a bad thing. And there's not an exact science with this, but it does give us some good intelligence about where the overall themes are, and what we're highlighting is some areas around protection are increasing and continue to increase around domestic violence, emotional neglect for children, but also the emerging themes around child exploitation as well, which we're seeing, which are profiled nationally as well. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Charles. Over to yourself, Stephen.
I can add a little bit of context that kind of predates Charles as well. He mentioned signs of safety, which we introduced pre-pandemic. And our practice at that point, we had remarkable results in relation to the reduction in the number of children on the Child Protection Register, a word I can't say. Gordon Pattinson might laugh in the background there as I struggle to say that particular word, Register. But we went down from about 150 at one point as low as into the teens. And that drop was alarming, actually, and we put a lot of work and a lot of study into that to look at why did it drop so much. And we didn't expect that the pendulum would swing back to what would be an ordinary level, and our numbers were steady around 30 to 40 for quite some time. Then the pandemic hit, and the pandemic's had a remarkable impact on all of us, but particularly vulnerable families and the children who were hidden from us to a degree in terms of during the pandemic, and got children coming back to schools, and that progression in terms of the 26% increase over that 2-year period. It's been a steady increase, and it's one that we've kept a close eye on, and it doesn't alarm me. It's something that I would expect, and in the context of everything else we've discussed today, we prioritise these children above all else in terms of the work that we do, and I'm comfortable with what the data tells us because of the scrutiny that goes on behind the scenes and the actual work that goes on in people's households as well. So just to add that extra context that Charles is aware of, but it's just interesting to see that pendulum swing, as it were.
Okay, I think that's all the questions. And just to conclude, if we're finished with questions today, I think the Public Protection Week was extremely successful, Hamish, as well. The comms behind that were very good, and there's been some great work done with the White Ribbon campaign and violence against women and girls, which we must keep focusing on, and also the openness and transparency that we have with regards to women being able to report such things and people being able to come forward. And I think the council's worked quite hard with yourselves to make sure that that's out in the media as much as possible for everybody across the region. So thank you for the hard work. Moving on now to, I need to do my recommendations. Sorry, we can now go to recommendations with regards to this report. Hamish, thank you again. 2.1, note the biennial reports, appendices 1 to 3, and associated public protection activity over the reporting period. 2.2, note the significant resource challenges and opportunities to keep people safe through effective multi-agency working and the requirement to work together to share salient information where an individual is considered at risk of harm. And 2.3, note the future progress detailed for 2024 to 26 as detailed in the reports. Thank you, members. So item number 13 is the Public Protection Minute of the 20th of August for noting. I'd like to add to that to say it has been questioned once in the past as to why myself and Councillor Howey were not at one meeting. We've made every single meeting, but unfortunately we couldn't make this one because that was the same day as a planning site visit and also the Right Care, Right Place consultation. We just simply cannot be at everything, as we know as councillors. So apologies, Hamish, that we weren't able to make that meeting. And there were valid reasons for that. Item 14, any other... Oh, pardon me. Councillor Dashwood, please.
Yeah, sorry, Chair, just on item 13, just to touch on what you said there. I know how busy it is with attendance and things as councillors, but my question, I suppose, is what can we do to ensure elected member representation when the councillors can't attend? Do we have contingency plans for that?
I'm not sure, Councillor Dashboard, but certainly we're able to read the minutes after the meetings, and we all communicate, myself and Councillor Howie communicate with a number of people on that committee. And I think virtually you'll know from your own diary, it is just virtually impossible to get to absolutely everything to meet the needs of our constituents, and that's where our most important priorities lie. So I'll ask governance, but I just think it's just impossible unless we have another third sub, which I don't think is within governance. Thanks, Councillor Dorward.
Thanks, Chair. I think one of the things that I raised, and it's a personal thing, is that we have at certain times of the year, and you've reflected that in terms of the it's a peaks and troughs of activity depending on what time of the year it is, and we have so many meetings pushed in to various times, and then other times there are much less meetings. I have asked that we review this in terms of governance, and I think you've made a valid point there, as has Councillor Dashboard, but you're right, you can't split yourself into three. And I think we have elected members who are elected to serve on various committees. I think adding additional members would make it very complicated and perhaps too challenging for, not just for the elected members, but for the members on the board to manage as well, because they have to form a relationship with the elected members as well. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Dorward. I personally would take that on board and agree with what you're saying. And I think I have a relationship that I believe with Hamish and the rest of the team that they would come to me if there was anything urgent. We're able to contact them, Councillor Dashboard, out with the working committees. They're quite able to do that. We do that often with regards to communications and the things we're seeing in our communities. And other councillors are able to approach Councillor Howie and myself, should that be the case. So I think if Hamish would like to come in on the back of this, if he felt there was anything that we were really missing, I think he would have the sense to contact both of us, but I'll leave that to Hamish to explain. But I take your points, Councillor Dashboard, but we just, being a councillor at the moment in such a hugely, we just physically couldn't get to the planning meeting that day and get to PPC because the travel time is too big. So neither of these meetings could be done online, and sometimes that's just the nature of it. Thanks. If you could come in, Hamish.
Okay.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I think you do yourself a bit of a disservice that yourself and Councillor Howie, it's very rare that one of you is not able to attend. So normally you would have one person there. I would also suggest to you that, you know, the Public Protection Committee runs on the basis of that everybody tries to support it the best they possibly can, and not everybody can make it every single time. So it's in general, most people can do deputisation, but as you say, a lot of it is about where you get the papers in advance. If there is an issue that you wish to raise, then you've done it in the past where you have submitted that issue and we discussed it and got back to you, and you do get the minutes as well. So as the independent chair, I'm more than comfortable that the representation that you currently have is suitable, and that if you are unable to do it, there is sufficient arrangements in place that anything can be raised or anything can be fed back.
Thank you very much, Hamish. I'm happy with that, and I hope other members are. Councillor Dashboard, do you wish to come back in at all?
Yeah, just to finish off, Chair. Yeah, it wasn't a comment against yourself or Councillor Howie. It was more about the governance, as you said. And as Hamish, is that something that elected members can do, or?
No, I don't think we can for this particular committee, Councillor Dashboard. These are committees that we sit on. It's not advisory, but we just sit on as subcommittees when you're chairs of committees. So there's a huge amount of them that we have to attend, sometimes in the evenings as well, as I'm sure in your role you do too. So no, in this instance, no. But we've only missed one in the whole year, and we were both, there was absolutely no way we could get to it. So I think we just need to be assured by Hamish as the chair that he's quite happy with our level of attendance, if that's acceptable to yourself. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, members. And just to close the meeting, item 14, do we have any other business? I have no other business. So I'd like to thank you all very much indeed for your attendance today and for the hard work involved in these committee papers. Thank you, everybody, and enjoy the rest of the day.